On 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting, of course, live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Nigel Farage, Reform UK leader, took on the government today as the leader of Reform appeared to be doing the work for Donald Trump, as he implied that the US president would have the power to veto the Chagos Island handover. They went toe-to-toe in Parliament. And on the same tickle, Reform MP Rupert Lowe has sensationally claimed that over 3 million immigrants have claimed universal credit since 2019. Now, the figure comes from a Department of Work and Pensions whistleblower. And on today's show, I will reveal the astonishing cost to the British taxpayer. It's unbelievable. And Donald Trump's war on woke just went nuclear because Trump has appointed Elon Musk to help flamethrower thousands of woke civil servants, saving billions of dollars. Plus, his new defense secretary will urge woke generals to bite the bullet. Is it time we did the same here in Britain? Well, Trump's due to meet Joe Biden within the next hour, and we'll bring you that live as it happens. Yesterday, the Archbishop of Canterbury was forced to resign after the John Smythe sex abuse scandal became simply too big to ignore. Later on today's show, I'll be joined by Richard Gittins, one of Smythe's victims, who will bravely share his harrowing story of how he suffered at the hands of a monster who never faced justice. That's all coming on today's show. Well, the show, always a pleasure to have your company. The truth they don't want us to know. The facts of foreign nationals in British prisons. The facts of foreign nationals who claim benefits. The facts of who pays the most or the littlest tax. These are the stats the government simply do not want us to have. They publish them in Denmark with full transparency. Why won't they publish them here? Well, a little clue to that is coming shortly on this show. An astonishing whistleblower at the Department of Work and Pensions has revealed exclusively to us at GB News the multi-billion-pound cost of universal credit that you, the British taxpayer, are paying every month. It's explosive and you will not want to miss it. Get in touch usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and it's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. The time is just after 3 o'clock. Let's take a look at your latest GB News headlines. And we'll start with some breaking news from this hour. Axel Rudakabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon, but was not asked to plea. The teenager appeared via video link from HMP Belmarsh, but refused to speak when he was asked twice to confirm his identity. Rudakabana is also charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a knife, and 2 terror-related offences: the production of biological toxin ricin and the possession of a PDF entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. Rudakabana's trial is scheduled for January of next year. In the last 15 minutes or so, President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington. He's being hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth transition of power. Biden, who initially ran against Trump in the 2024 election, will welcome the former and future presidents into the Oval Office, a traditional courtesy by outgoing presidents that Trump did not extend to Biden in 2020 when he won the position. Leicestershire police have confirmed in the last few minutes that a collision took place earlier today between a bus carrying school children and an HGV lorry on the A46. 16 passengers sustained minor injuries and 10 of those were taken to hospital as a precaution. Emergency services responded at the time and local road closures were put in place. That road has since reopened. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs today over council tax, national insurance contributions and the budget. The Conservative leader also pressed the PM on decisions he made at the COP29 climate summit in Baku.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister back from his trip to Azerbaijan, where he has unilaterally made commitments that will make life more experienced for everyone back home.
I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, to the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so.
The safeguarding lead at the Church of England says abuse within the church is a whole church problem. That's after the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, resigned following a damning report that revealed a cover-up spanning decades. It comes as victims of John Smythe called for further resignations from senior clergy members involved in the scandal. Justin Welby announced yesterday that he was standing down after an independent review concluded Smythe could have been brought to justice if he had formally reported him to the police more than a decade ago. Post office bosses have set out plans to fix their finances amid reports that hundreds of branches could be closing down. The shake-up may result in the closure of 115 branches wholly owned by the Post Office, putting more than 1,000 jobs at risk. Post Office Chairman Nigel Railton made the announcement at the company's HQ in London earlier on today, addressing postmasters across the country as well as retail partners and Post Office staff. Sarah Sharif's father has told jurors he takes full responsibility for the death of his 10-year-old daughter. Taxi driver Irfan Sharif made the admission under cross-examination as his wife Binash Batul, aged 30, sobbed in the dock of the Old Bailey on Wednesday. However, speaking this afternoon, Sharif maintained he did not murder his daughter, saying, "I did not intend to kill her." And a change of pace now, never mind the age-old question of a white Christmas. Could we be in for a white November? The Met Office has announced that the UK could see a flurry of snow as early as this Sunday, as temperatures have already plummeted below zero in certain parts of the country. They say that Arctic winds moving southward will bring freezing weather, bringing with it what they called the possibility of snow. I'm sure some people will be dreading that. Those are your latest headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophie. Now, Nigel Farage took on the government today, toe-to-toe, as the Reform UK leader appeared to be doing the work for Donald Trump, as he implied that the US president would have the power to veto the Chagos Island handover. Take a listen.
Mauritius has no legal or historical claim to the sovereignty of a group of islands that are 1,300 miles away from where it is. Nor does, from the International Court, it was purely an advisory opinion. There is no legal reason why we have to do any of this. Now, I warned the Foreign Secretary 6 weeks ago in this chamber that it was an enormous mistake to do this, given that we had a US presidential election coming up on November the 5th. And if you say to me, well, yes, it's okay, the United States are fully in favour, really? There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm afraid, obviously, I fundamentally disagree with what the honourable gentleman has had to say. International courts were reaching judgments, international organisations were taking steps not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty, and this threatened the secure and effective operation of the base. And in the absence of a negotiated solution, a legally binding decision against the UK seemed inevitable. This would have threatened the secure and effective operation of the base, and that was not sustainable.
Well, the gloves were off there as Nigel Farage went toe-to-toe at PMQs. And let's bring in our reporter, Adam Cherry, who's with me here in Westminster. Adam, you were at the Chagos Islands demo last night in Hackney. I spoke to you when I was covering for Nigel Farage on his show. GB News, proud to say, the only TV channel who bothered to turn up to give them a voice. And here we are again. Farage putting forward the motion, the clear motion, that you can go ahead with this plan to get rid of sovereignty for the Chagos Islands, but Donald Trump isn't going to take that. Is this a case of Nigel there on the green benches making the bidding on behalf of Washington, and is that acceptable? Will the Labour Party listen?
Look, I understand there's this call to have Nigel Farage given some official role now that his mate Donald Trump is in the White House, and that would benefit the country, and Keir Starmer always said country above party, and that maybe there's some value in that. Whether that will be granted, I mean, look, we've already heard from the government, and they're saying that's absolutely not going to happen. And to be honest, if you imagine for a second that we had a socialist in the White House, let's say we had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the White House, and Jeremy Corbyn was very friendly to her on the backbenches in the Commons, and we had a Reform government front bench. Do we honestly think that the Reform government in this scenario would say, you know what, we need to work really closely with Jeremy Corbyn? I suspect not. So I think the politics of this are quite clear. On the Chagos point separately, you know, I do think it's fair to say that the Labour government have underestimated the scale of opposition to this.
What kind of things were the people, the Chagosians, telling you last night? And was it interesting how there were representatives from major political parties there, but nobody even bothered to turn up from the Labour Party?
Was interesting. Yeah, exactly. And I would imagine the reason no one from the Labour Party did that is because they all want jobs. And if you're there protesting against something that your government has just decided in the last month, you're probably not going to be sitting on the front bench anytime soon. What did the Chagosians say? Well, as we discussed last night, there was a clear chorus of voices all saying, we have been ignored, and this is about our self-determination. That's the whole point. That is also what you've heard Nigel Farage say yesterday and today. Wendy Morton, who was there last night, we spoke to her. She's a shadow foreign minister. She said the same thing. A consensus on that. The Chagosians have been ignored, and it's about sovereignty, self-determination and autonomy. And that has been undermined by this deal.
And Keir Starmer was bridled when he had a complete pop at Nigel Farage. He said, I'm glad to see that you've made a rare appearance back in Britain. You spent so much time in America. I thought we'd have to put you on the immigration figures. Yeah. Now, it got a good laugh.
It did, yeah.
In the Commons. You were there. But at the same time, let's look at Jet Set Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer, since he's been in power, he's been out of the country for 22 days. He's been at the COP conference that nobody else seems to care about. He's been in Paris on the back of a Jeep with Emmanuel Macron. He's been in DC. He's been in Brussels. Seek him there, seek him there, seek him everywhere.
Yeah.
He's been one away himself.
Yeah, I mean, it got a laugh from the Labour benches, but again, you know, they're on the Labour benches. Of course they're going to laugh when their leader makes a silly little joke like that. Fine, OK, I thought Nigel Farage, it was all in good spirits, whatever. On Starmer himself, well, I suppose he'd argue that as a new Prime Minister, he needs to craft new relationships and get to know all these world leaders. Whether he needs to go to a climate conference that none of the other, as you say, really none of the other major players cared about. I mean, the Taliban were there, which is interesting. I'm not sure why.
The Taliban were there?
Yeah, representatives from the Taliban were there. Yeah. Did you not know that? Well, right, so...
No, I didn't know that.
OK, so representatives from the Taliban, representing Afghanistan, were there. I mean, it was hilarious. We're going off a tangent here, but we did ask the Downing Street press spokesman, any plans to meet the Taliban? The Prime Minister has no plans at the moment to meet the Taliban. So there we go. I mean, they were there.
But it is worth pointing out that there does now seem to be very much of a crusade. Sir Keir Starmer, he's valiantly clinging to the mast and howling into the storm that, you know, net zero must be met, but China didn't turn up, India didn't turn up, France didn't turn up, Canada, Justin Trudeau, the king of woke, he would turn up to the opening of an envelope. Normally, if it's about climate change, he wasn't there. Now Donald Trump, back to that man. He's going to be taking the helm of the biggest Western superpower. Drill, baby, drill, is his mantra. Does all of this on Chagos Islands and net zero start to leave Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party and the United Kingdom looking a little bit isolated?
Yeah, it's difficult for them, isn't it? And that's obviously what Nigel Farage is saying is, look, I have the ear of this man, use it. And we can go back and forth on whether that's, you know, helpful or whether they'll take that opportunity up. There's also the question of the free trade agreement. You know, I've just seen reports in the last hour or so, I think from Bloomberg, there's going to be some friction there. So all over the place, there are warning signals. And whether they're in a position to solve that, whether David Lammy is the right man, given his past comments, I mean, you know, the whole front bench are compromised in that respect. So I think it will require some fence mending. And I think with Trump, if you're very friendly and if you sort of kiss the ring a little bit, he can be forgiven for whatever. If you've called him a Nazi or whatever before, somehow he gets over it. I mean, look at his own vice president. So there might be some scope there.
OK, Adam Cherry, thank you very much. A lively start to the top of the show. Thank you very much. Now, here's one for you. How many foreign nationals are claiming benefits in the UK? Well, Reform UK's Rupert Lowe says he's spoken to a whistleblower from the Department of Work and Pensions who reckons that 50,000 migrants are becoming eligible for universal credit in the UK each and every month. And the Reform UK MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, the man with the plan, joins us now on the show. Rupert, a huge welcome to GB News today. Some astonishing figures you put out. Let me first ask you, where did these figures come from? Because we're continually asking on GB News, why aren't these figures published? Why aren't they transparent? We get them in Denmark. We know exactly how many foreign nationals are in jail there, what crimes they commit, but the British government is totally reluctant to publish them, and yet you've come across them. First of all, how do you get your hands on them? Secondly, talk us through your numbers.
Martin, the theory behind this is that as an MP, I can ask up to 20 questions a day, and I would hope that they would be answered. As an elected Member of Parliament representing Great Yarmouth, we should be the sovereign body governing the country, and if we ask questions, information should be transparent. The problem we've got is that very often, I mean, and by the way, we know that a lot of this data is available, but we're told it isn't collected or they can't openly tell us. So what we've been doing is firing in questions. I think we've asked something like 247 questions or 275 questions even since I've been an MP. I think we fired in 20 today so far. So, but what we get back is answers that are evasive. And you're quite right. In my view, a healthy, vibrant democracy is a transparent democracy. So the British taxpayer who's funding this should rightfully be given the raw data to be able to make his judgment on whether the money that is being spent in his name is good value or not. So the way we got at this is we've been asking questions around this, a bit like Inspector Clouseau, hopefully with a bit more of a successful outcome than Inspector Clouseau. And we've come using our whistleblower who gives us guidance on what happens in the DWP. And I must tell you, Martin, the more I learn about the DWP, I think it's handing out taxpayers' money like confetti with absolutely no accountability whatsoever. Whether it's Motability, whatever they do, they seem to be handing our cash out without any constraint at all. So we've been using questions on habitual residents. We've had advice on, and we think the figures that we've come up with are very conservative. So 50,000 people a month are increasingly claiming universal credit. So we think that's a very conservative number from what we know. But because the government won't answer our questions, we've had to effectively push this number out on the basis of the answers we have had. We get a few answers, such as on foreign criminals in jails. I think about 10,500 foreign criminals in our prisons. I've said in the past they should be deported immediately. We've also got effectively reoffending rates for those prisoners, and I think there's been 40,000 reoffences from foreign prisoners, which is a disgrace in itself. So we are trying to use these questions to inform the British people of the way in which they're being misled, misgoverned, and kept in what I call Mushroom Corner, which is a dark and damp place. So I think what we're trying to do, and we're putting this out, we've challenged the DWP. If they disagree with these numbers, Martin, that I want to hear from them. I want them to tell me they're wrong. We don't think they're wrong, and that's why we put them out. So it's really a challenge to the opaque reporting system that our government appears to be guilty of.
Absolutely astonishing. You've been through the numbers between 2019 and 2024 over that period, and it was 342,900 in 2019, that calendar year, rising in 2021 off the back of lockdown, of course, till 2022, 941,400 foreign nationals coming to British shores and claiming universal credit in one calendar year alone. The figures that you put out today, when you total those 5 years and remove the Brits, because about 10% of those coming to this country are Brits who live, the returning Brits.
Again, the numbers are very opaque, but the returning Brits, we've assumed are 10% of the numbers, and therefore we strip that out.
And the total number that you published today, Rupert, the total number you published, to be clear, is 3,379,500 in 5 years alone. That's the thick end of 3.5 million foreign nationals claiming universal credit. We don't know how long for. We don't know how much they've taken out. We can only guess. But that's the point, isn't it? Why aren't we given the full and frank information so we can make our own minds up?
That's the question, Martin. This data, we think it is available. And I personally think it's an absolute disgrace that when asked, I'm an MP, I should be able to ask these questions and get straight answers. My job is to hold government to account. And my job is to ensure that we act collectively in the interests of the British people. Not people coming into this country legally or illegally, the British people who pay their taxes, who are basically extremely law-abiding, who collect VAT, national insurance, PAYE, pensions, they gift wrap the lot, they pay it to the state. And what we've got here, in my view, is we have a situation here where the servant has become the master, Martin. What should be happening is government is there to serve the people. It is not there to get the people to serve it. And what's happened is there's a great film, I don't know if you've ever seen it, with Dirk Bogarde, called The Servant by Joseph Losey. And it's the most brilliant film where the servant gradually, through deceit and deception, becomes the master. And I think that's what's happened here. And I think we've got to collectively demand that as the tax-paying British public, we should be given the raw data. As you quite rightly said at the introduction, in Denmark, you can get the raw data and you can see the effects of immigration. And if you want me to be blunt, I think, frankly, the government knows that their post-war sort of, plan to create a multicultural Britain is failing. And the data, I suspect, will back that up. So therefore, we're not getting the data. So I hope the DWP will tell me I'm wrong, the government will change their policy and actually will publish this data so we can all then make our minds up on transparent, correct data.
OK, Rupert Lowe, you've certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons. And just to reiterate, the Departments for Work and Pensions say that they will provide GB News with the statements later this afternoon. And we'll bring you that as soon as it comes through. Rupert Lowe, in the meantime, thank you very, very much. What an astonishing set of numbers that is. More on that later in the show. Now, how do you like to win your entire Christmas this year exclusively from GB News? Well, we're giving you that precise chance to do that with the very latest Great British Giveaway, a bonus festive bumper edition. Here's the details that you need to enter. Now, coming up, Donald Trump's war on woke just went nuclear because Trump has appointed Elon Musk. Plus, his new defence secretary said he will urge woke generals to bite the bullet. Trump wants them out on the first day he's in office. The big question is it time that we did the same kind of treatment here in Britain? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
But it turns out there's a growing number of grandparents who are now taking up the hobby.
And not all of them are male. 7 million gamers are aged over 50, 7 million of them. And we're going to introduce you to one this morning. Her name's Kath Bowie. She's 76 years of age, and Kath has become a worldwide star of the game Fortnite. Good to see you, Kath.
Hello, good morning to both of you.
Morning.
And tell me this, Kath, is Bowie your real name?
Bowie. Yeah,
Bowie.
Yes, it is my real name, yes.
And you do it a Bowie and not a Bowie?
It's a Bowie, yes, definitely Bowie, yes.
Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie.
Bowie.
But that's not what the Jim Bowie was called, or Jim Bowie was called in the Alamo. He was a Bowie.
No, but that's what I'm called, Kath Bowie.
Oh,
She's their own superstar.
You are your own superstar. You are indeed. Well, so we're led to believe, Kath, that there's nobody else like you, or very few people like you, but there is. There is lots of people your age, your stage, doing what you do.
Yes, there's not a lot that streams. Okay, Fortnite, but there's definitely plenty that plays. Any game, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Fortnite. It can be any game.
So Kath, how did you get started in all of this?
Oh, yeah, well, it's 7 years ago, actually. I walked into my teenage grandson's bedroom and just saw him playing what I now know, of course, what I play is Fortnite. And that was the very first week that Epic had released it. And it was just really love at first sight.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Time is 3:27. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. US President-elect Donald Trump has confirmed that Elon Musk will play a key role in his cabinet when he retakes office in January. The Tesla CEO and the owner of X will lead the Department of Government Efficiency with former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. And this comes after Elon Musk endorsed Donald Trump and donated millions of dollars to help him get elected as president. Well, joining me now to sink our teeth into this is the US political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I believe the first time we've spoken since Donald Trump was elected as the next president. So they promised a bonfire of the civil servants, a total overhaul of wokedom, of the military, of academia, and it seems they're good for their word. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, now we're seeing where the rubber actually meets the road, and Donald Trump has swiftly begun the process of naming people to not only lead key agencies and departments, but he's also putting people in the White House who he believes will actually be able to implement those policies that many of these agencies will, in fact, carry out. And we know that Donald Trump has also learned a lot from his first time in office by naming a White House chief of staff so quickly. And he said that one of the mistakes he made during his first tenure in office was not naming a White House chief of staff quick enough. And clearly we know that the White House chief of staff is perhaps the most important job in all of Washington. And clearly what we're seeing now is Donald Trump has already made two key moves by naming Susie Wiles, who will be his White House chief of staff, and of course, Stephen Miller, who served in his first administration, who will be the deputy White House chief of staff for policy.
And Elon Musk, of course, if he's going to be the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency, he's renowned when he bought Twitter, which of course now is X. He cut 80% of the entire workforce of Twitter at the time, saving $3 billion a year. And clearly now he has his eyes set on the civil service, the public service in America. He thinks he can do the same and simply get rid of entire swathes of the civil service. Do you think that's a good idea, and how that go down in America?
Yeah, that's right. But again, what we know about Elon Musk is the value of X, we know, has gone down exponentially. And so clearly, this is a man who is certainly no stranger to criticism. And I think this is what Donald Trump wants to see in office, someone who is a mercurial person, someone who will certainly shake things up. And that is what Donald Trump wants and expects from Elon Musk. The question about this new department, this new agency, we don't know if it's an agency, a department, or an advisory board. It's unclear exactly how it's going to work. We're told it's going to be an advisory board for the White House. So it's unclear how much of the recommendations that come from what Elon Musk provides will actually go into effect in terms of how it shapes the government. We know much of the resources come, in fact, the purse strings for government comes from Congress. So Elon Musk can actually make as many recommendations as he wants, but it's actually up to Congress to actually cut much of the red tape, much of the bureaucracy that he wants to see done, if in fact it happens at all.
And Eric, we've got a quick minute here. Pete Hegseth, he's the new Secretary of Defense. He's a Fox News channel host and an Army veteran. They're also saying, OK, you can't hear us. We'll have to leave it there. Just to quickly add there that Pete Hegseth is Trump's new Secretary of Defense, is a Fox News channel host, a former Army veteran, pledged to get rid of woke generals in the Army. No more pronouns, no more trans people allowed in the military in America, appointing a warrior board to clear out the military. And Donald Trump has said anybody involved in the bungled evacuation of Afghanistan, he wants a resignation by lunchtime on day one when he takes office in January. Extraordinary times ahead in Washington. There's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson is facing a police investigation over a Twitter post from last year. Is she the latest victim of two-tier policing? How about policing the streets and not tweets? But first, here's your latest news headlines, and it's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. Let's take a look at your latest headlines for this hour. Axel Rudakabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon, but was not asked to plea. The teenager appeared via video link from HMP Belmarsh, but refused to speak when he was asked twice to confirm his identity. Rudy Cabana is also charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a knife, and 2 terror-related offences: the production of biological toxin ricin and the possession of a PDF entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. Rudy Cabana's trial is scheduled for January of next year. In the last hour, President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington. He's being hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth transition of power. Biden, who initially ran against Trump in the 2024 election, will welcome the former and future presidents into the Oval Office, a traditional courtesy by outgoing presidents that Trump did not extend to Biden in 2020 when he won the position. Failing hospitals will be named and shamed in league tables and managers sacked if they cannot improve patient care and take control of finances. Health Secretary Wes Streeting told leaders at the NHS Providers Conference in Liverpool there will be no more rewards for failure, in his words. That was as he set out a package of measures aimed at tackling poor performance. NHS England will carry out a no-holds-barred review of NHS performances across England, with the results made public in league tables, which will be regularly updated. The Health Secretary also championed the Chancellor's autumn budget, claiming the NHS came out on top.
Our collective challenge is to take the NHS from the worst crisis in its history, put it back on its feet and make it fit for the future. The budget was important. The Chancellor gave us the investment we need to arrest the decline, begin fixing the foundations and start turning the service around. The NHS was the standout winner. We're delivering the largest health capital budget since Labour was last in power and the biggest cash uplift in day-to-day spending of any government department.
Those are your latest headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
But before I go, let's take a look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2740 and €1.1990 euros. The price of gold is £2,047.66 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,010 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow we're back to where we have been for most of November. Dry and cloudy kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. Quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up. So for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on. And across the northwest of Scotland, the cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry, but a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Still issues on the M18 this afternoon around Thorn at Junction 6. The northbound side blocked at Junction 6, and the southbound side is blocked from the M62 down towards Thorn. So traffic at a stand at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. Massive delays, as you can well imagine. Eastbound M62 from Selby 34 towards the M18 35 also blocked and at a stand as well. Now the southbound M1 at the turn off of Sheffield and Workshop Junction 31. A lane out in queues, that one's due to a collision as well. And there's big queues for the southbound M6 now just after Stafford North at 14. 2 lanes are coned off, a 2-van collision. They're being recovered. A fuel spillage too. Congestion before the Stafford services. The A34 Stone Road slow going too. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, we've had absolutely shed loads of people getting in touch with us already on the show, and the one that's really got you going is some numbers that we revealed. Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP for Great Yarmouth, asked a question in Parliament about the numbers of foreign-born nationals on universal credit in the UK by his reckoning, and we are waiting for a statement back from the Department of Work and Pensions on this. By his reckoning, minus British nationals coming back to the UK, there are 3,379,500 foreign nationals who've claimed universal credit since 2019 till 2024. Later in the show, I'll reveal the true cost of that to the British taxpayer. Absolutely astonishing. Now, the Runcorn incinerator is the largest of its kind in the UK and treats almost 1 million tonnes of non-recyclable waste every single year. Our Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper has been speaking to some of the residents who live nearby.
High fences and even higher security. The largest incinerator in the UK seems to take no shortcuts when it comes to keeping out the eyes of the public. But residents in the area want people to see the impact it's having on their everyday lives.
It's horrendous. It's like all the steam blowing over into our buildings. The houses are damp. We all wake up with sniffles, coughs every morning. In the summer, the flies are horrendous. Rats have increased, and now we get seagulls as well. As soon as you open the curtains, it's just there. I'm reminded of it as soon as I wake up every day.
Last year, following a nuisance claim against plant operator Viridor, local residents were offered a sum of just over £4,500 as compensation. That was in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement preventing them from going to the press. Local business owner George Parker was just one of only a handful of people to refuse.
The offer was made 2 weeks before Christmas last year. Of course, most people jumped at the chance. They've never seen £5,000. I refuse to take it because I think what they're doing is actually criminal.
When planning permission initially went in, locals were promised the plant would have a low visual impact. But now it's not just the appearance that's become a concern.
I'm worried about the health side of it. You wake up with coughs, colds, everything else. My son's only young. He basically runs a business now, so he's going to be another 30 years, maybe 40 years. What impact is it going to have on him? Because we don't know what's coming out of these chimneys.
GB News asked Viridor for a comment on this, but they refused. However, the Environment Agency had this to say. We have never been able to substantiate any complaints about odour, rats, seagulls or flies from the site, despite frequent visits by our officers. We continue to carry out regular site inspections and audits to ensure the operator is meeting the conditions of its environmental permit. And yet, Mandy owns a dog grooming business. She says she's losing money and is unable to sell her home. Now, she's had enough.
It's just monstrosity. It's ugly. And I bet Mr Viridor hasn't got one in his front garden. Just because it's a poor area, let's just stick it there, you know. Small people are not going to be able to fight this, so we'll just put them on death row.
Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Now, Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson is facing an investigation for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. She claims that 2 police officers called at her home on Remembrance Sunday to inform her that she was being investigated. When she questioned it, the officer failed to disclose what the investigation was even about or even who had accused her. Well, a spokesperson for Essex Police has said this. The report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. Let's get the thoughts now of the barrister and the writer and friend of the show, Stephen Barrett. Stephen, welcome to the show. And here we are again, the dreaded non-crime hate incident. This is when police should be policing the streets. Instead, they're policing tweets. It's bad enough when they're going after any old person on social media, on Facebook or Twitter. Now they're going, though, for one of the most well-respected Conservative journalists in all of the country. What on earth's going on?
Well, it looks increasingly dodgy. And what's happening, Martin, is that we've got so much subjectivity in law that that's allowing a lot of discretion, and it's only being used one way. It's quite clear now that it's being used by left-leaning people to pursue right-leaning people. Now, this began as a non-crime hate incident, and Essex Police have rowed back from that. But let's just explain to your viewers and listeners what a non-crime hate incident is. I mean, it's complete nonsense, Martin. It needs to go. It's anything that someone who isn't, so say you were accused of it, it would be anything you did to me that anybody watching this thinks is motivated by the fact that I'm bisexual. So look, you're sitting there nodding your head. Well, maybe that's motivated by your dislike of bisexuals. You know, look at you smiling. How dare you smile? That looks like a non-crime hate incident. I mean, this is utter tosh. It's complete subjectivity. A man called Harry Miller took the College of Policing to court over this and won quite extensively and the judges don't like this because, like me, they don't like bad law, which is what all this rubbish is. Now, Essex Police, it's fair to acknowledge, they're rowing back from this. They went to Alison's house. They accosted her. I mean, how that's not a non-crime hate incident, I don't know. It's pretty threatening, pretty scary. And they ruined her day because she was going to go to Remembrance Sunday and she didn't end up going because, you know, this sort of stuff is pretty bad. If you're a decent person, you don't like police officers turning up at your house. It is fundamentally intimidating. But they're rowing back from it by claiming that they're actually pursuing an offence under the Public Order Act. Now, they've got the section number wrong, Martin. So it's not Section 17. Section 17 is just the definition of what racism is. It's Section 18 is, I suspect, the offence, although, you know, maybe they want to get their ducks in order before they send out press statements. But that will be in order to sort of scare everybody into not talking about this and making it more sensitive. I sincerely doubt that they have had evidence for 12 months that they've done nothing with in order to prosecute Alison Pearson. I think it is much more likely that this genuinely was what the officers said it was initially, a non-crime hate incident, because that can be reported by anyone. And as I said, it's not just the absurdity that you nodding your head could be claimed to be an act of hate against bisexual people. It doesn't need me to make the report. It just needs somebody who isn't you to do it. And what we've done is we've built highly exploitable systems in this country, almost like we were totally naive to the fact that some people in our society are, frankly, Martin, wrong-uns. And now the wrong-uns are able to abuse these systems in order to pursue and hound people.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, Stephen Barrett, there have been 140,561 of these non-crime hate incidents in the last year alone. They stay on people's criminal records for years. They can end people's careers. They don't have to be proven. The person can retain anonymity who puts them across. They're a terrible blight on our legal system. As you say, Harry Miller won at the Royal Courts of Justice. This should have been stamped out. They are still going on, but I'm afraid, Stephen, we've simply run out of time. We have to leave it there, but please join us again on this topic. And just so you know, tonight, Alison Pearson will be appearing live on GB News. She'll be joining Nigel Farage from 7 p.m. this evening, so please tune in. Now, still to come, we're crossing live to Washington, D.C. as we wait for Donald Trump to meet Joe Biden. I'm Martin Daubney. There we go, live pictures, the former and the present and the future president about to meet. That's coming up.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:51. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, loads of you have been getting in touch already throughout the show with your thoughts on the big stories of the day. And to remind you, you can easily take part in that conversation by going to gbnews.com/you'll Let's read through a few of your opinions now. On the topic of Alison Pearson, the Telegraph journalist, having her door banged on by two coppers on Remembrance Sunday about a 1-year-old social media post. She doesn't even know which social media post it was. Carol says this: in my opinion, the journalist being interviewed over a 1-year-old tweet is being used as a shot over the bows to shut us all up. In the week, the man accused of carrying out the Southport attacks is appearing in court. more two-tier control over free speech. Now, of course, Carol, there's no proof of that, but it's an interesting theory. Is timing everything? Keep quiet about something, or you might get a knock at the door. Just to repeat, Stephen Barrett, the barrister, was on the show a short while ago there. 140,561 of these offences have taken place, where anybody can complain about anything they like, and the coppers are duty-bound to investigate. Is that a complete and utter waste of police time? It's not like there's a boom in knife crime. It's not like there's a boom in illegal immigration that maybe the police could be looking into. No, they'd rather fiddle around on your social media content. Another astonishing story brought you at the top of the previous hour, and that was Rupert Lowe from the Reform Party about the numbers of foreign-born nationals arriving into the UK since 2019 on universal credit. It is an astonishing figure. The figure is, wait for it, 3,379,500 since 2019. We're awaiting a statement from the Department of Work and Pensions because these figures were obtained from the whistleblower. Mr. Lowe tells us we can't get the true figures because they don't want to publish them. I wonder what they're trying to hide. Well, Anthony says this: I'm fascinated by the information on immigrants claiming benefits in Britain. 50,000 per year per week. This is a massive number. However, I believe that we are all even more interested in how much of our taxes have been wasted. And that's the point. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and all these benefits have to be paid for by someone. Now, in about 20 minutes' time, I'm going to reveal how much all of this is costing you. You will not believe how much money is going on these benefits, and it's much, much more, trust me, than the financial black hole. Also coming up in the next hour, the future president, the next president, Donald Trump, will meet the current president. Live pictures there of Washington, D.C., Donald Trump about to go into that building to meet President Biden and also to meet the leaders of the House. And, of course, the House has now, looks like, been taken over by the Republicans. That's all coming up in your next action-packed hour. Make sure you stick around. We'll be back soon. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. And now here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow, we're back to where we have been for most of November. Dry and cloudy kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. Quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up. So for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on. And across the northwest of Scotland, the cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry, but a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Major issues for the M62 and the M18 this afternoon. Now on the M18, it's blocked at Thorn Junction 6 both sides. At the scene of a multi-vehicle collision, that's a southbound blockage, means you can't get on at the M62, and that means towards there, the eastbound M62 blocked, Selby 34 towards junction 35, queuing on all approaches there. The southbound M1 Ossett at 40 to Wakefield at 39, a breakdown blocking a lane causing queues. Big delays this afternoon, southbound M6 after Stafford North at 14, queuing before the Stafford services, indeed queuing on surrounding routes, a two-van bump there and a fuel spillage being recovered. And the anti-clock M25, lane 1 of 5 closed, just after Staines at 13, a vehicle fire there, naturally causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only...
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting, of course, live from the heart of Westminster for you and all across the UK. On today's show, Nigel Farage took on the government today toe-to-toe as a Reform UK leader appeared to be doing the work for Donald Trump as he implied that the US president-elect would have the power to veto the Chagos Islands handover. And a lot of disgruntled Labour voters now might feel like turkeys who voted for Christmas. But now there might be no turkeys at Christmas, thanks to a rebel farmer strike who plan to choke food supplies. Might your Christmas lunch be under threat? And Reform MP Rupert Lowe has sensationally claimed that over 3 million immigrants have claimed universal credit since 2019 in the UK. Now, the figure comes from a Department of Work and Pensions whistleblower. And on today's show, in a short time, I'll be revealing the astonishing cost to the British taxpayers. It's off the scale. And Donald Trump's war on woke just went nuclear. Trump has appointed Elon Musk to help flamethrower thousands of woke civil servants, saving billions of dollars. Plus, his new defence secretary will urge woke generals to bite the bullet. Is it time that we did the same over here in Blighty? And talking of which, Donald Trump, we've got live pictures there from Washington, D.C. The future president, Donald Trump, is due to meet the current president, Joe Biden, shortly. And we'll bring you live pictures of that as it happens. And yesterday, the Archbishop of Canterbury was forced to resign after the John Smythe sex abuse scandal simply became too big to ignore. Later on today's show, I'll be joined by Richard Gittins, one of Smythe's victims, who will bravely share his harrowing story of how he suffered at the hands of a monster who never faced justice. That's all coming in your next hour. What was the show? Always a pleasure to have your company. I'm joined in the studio by Rob Bates. He's about to tell us the astonishing cost of universal credit to those who come to Britain from overseas. These numbers are simply eye-watering. You'll not want to miss them. Stick around and get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. The time is just after 4 o'clock and these are your latest headlines. I want to start this hour with some breaking news from the past couple of minutes from the Reuters news agency. They say that the Lebanese Health Ministry has said that Israeli attacks on Lebanon have killed at least 3,365 and injured 14,344 since October 7th last year. They also said that 78 people were killed and 122 were wounded on Tuesday. That's some breaking news in the past few minutes for you there. Axel Rudakabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon, but was not asked to plea. The teenager appeared via video link from HMP Belmarsh, but refused to speak when he was asked twice to confirm his identity. Rudakabana is also charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a knife, and 2 terror-related offences, the production of biological toxin ricin and the possession of a PDF entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. Rudakabana's trial is scheduled for January of next year. In the last couple of hours, the President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington. He's being hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth transition of power. Biden, who initially ran against Trump in the 2024 election, will welcome the former and future presidents into the Oval Office, a traditional courtesy by outgoing presidents that Trump did not extend to Biden in 2020 when he won. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs today over council tax, national insurance contributions and the budget. The Conservative leader also pressed the PM on decisions he made at the COP29 climate summit in Baku.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister back from his trip to Azerbaijan, where he has unilaterally made commitments that will make life more experienced for everyone back home.
I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, to the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so.
Failing hospitals will be named and shamed in league tables and managers sacked if they cannot improve patient care and take control of finances. Health Secretary Wes Streeting told leaders at the NHS Providers Conference in Liverpool there will be no more rewards for failure. That's in his words, as he set out a package of measures aimed at tackling poor performance. NHS England will carry out a no-holds-barred review of NHS performances across England, with the results made public in league tables. NHS trusts can be expected to be ranked on a range of indicators, such as finances, delivery of services, patient access to care and the competency of leadership. The Health Secretary also championed the Chancellor's autumn budget, claiming the NHS came out on top.
Our collective challenge is to take the NHS from the worst crisis in its history, put it back on its feet and make it fit for the future. The budget was important. The Chancellor gave us the investment we need to arrest the decline, begin fixing the foundations and start turning the service around. The NHS was the standout winner. We're delivering the largest health capital budget since Labour was last in power and the biggest cash uplift in day-to-day spending of any government department.
And finally, authorities in Indonesia are racing to evacuate remaining villagers around an erupting volcano. Mount Luatobi Laki-Laki on Flores Island erupted last week, but is continuing to spew out lava and towering columns of ash. Local authorities are reporting that 15,000 people have been evacuated, with at least 63 injuries and damage to around 2,500 houses. The UK Foreign Office has issued travel warnings for the region. But for now, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophie. Now you're seeing live pictures of Washington, D.C. on your screen. Let's get them up there as President Trump will shortly meet Joe Biden. That's the future president, the next president, the 47th president and the 45th about to meet Joe Biden shortly. We understand he's just met leaders of the House of Representatives, but now Joe Biden about to meet Donald Trump. And we'll bring you those pictures, of course, live when that happens. All eyes on the White House there as the next chapter of American history is about to open. Now, moving on, let's get first to Nigel Farage today. He took on the government toe-to-toe as the Reform UK leader appeared to be doing the work for that man, Donald Trump, as he implied that the future US president would have the power to veto the Chagos Island handover. Take a listen.
Mauritius has no legal or historical claim to the sovereignty of a group of islands that are 1,300 miles away from where it is. Nor does, from the International Court, it was purely an advisory opinion. There is no legal reason why we have to do any of this. Now, I warned the Foreign Secretary 6 weeks ago in this chamber that it was an enormous mistake to do this, given that we had a US presidential election coming up on November the 5th. And if you say to me, well, yes, it's OK, the United States are fully in favour, really? There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm afraid, obviously, I fundamentally disagree with what the honourable gentleman has had to say. International courts were reaching judgments, international organisations were taking steps not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty, and this threatened the secure and effective operation of the base. And in the absence of a negotiated solution, a legally binding decision against the UK seemed inevitable. This would have threatened the secure and effective operation of the base, and that was not sustainable.
Well, it's a classic bit of pantomime in Parliament, and let's bring in our reporter, Adam Cherry, who joins me in Westminster. Adam, Nigel Farage had clearly intimated that he's got the ear of Donald Trump and that Donald Trump isn't happy about what they call a surrender of the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius, a pointless surrender of territory. And, of course, there's that US naval base on there. And Nigel Farage there very, very clearly saying, well, I know what Donald Trump wants, and it's not what you're doing. Tell us more.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this, isn't it, is that in the last Trump presidency, you did not have a Nigel Farage sitting on the back benches being a pain and every 10 minutes reminding you that he does have, it's true, he does have the ear of the president and he knows what he's really thinking. Whether the Labour Party decide to rely on that and actually get him an official role, I would be very surprised about that. We were talking about this previously. You know, you saw in that clip there, Jeremy Corbyn looking ashen-faced at Nigel Farage as he speaks behind him. Imagine if the roles were reversed. So just a little thought experiment for why this probably will never go anywhere in terms of getting Farage involved in the game proper. If you had a socialist in the White House, you had an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Bernie Sanders, and Jeremy Corbyn was very friendly with that person, and then he comes to the House of Commons and you've got a Reform front bench, and Jeremy Corbyn says, look, I am very friendly with Bernie Sanders, let's work with me. I don't think there'd be much of an appetite to do that. You know, they'd say, we're the government, you're our political foes, let's not go there. So officially, I don't think there's anything really realistic that could happen. And yet, last night, Adam, you were at that Chagosian demo. I covered for Nigel's show. You were the only British journalist, from from Tech TV there. So well done on that. Well done to GB News. You had their ear, and they were telling you they're not at all happy with this arrangement the Labour Party have come out with. Tell us more about that. Yeah, well, as I said to you last night, it was all about self-determination. They're British, it's an issue of sovereignty, and it was a chorus. Everyone said the same thing. I mean, I spoke to a few MPs as well. I mean, there was Wendy Morton, who's a shadow foreign minister, so she, of course, will try and hold the front bench to account on this. But also, crucially, Chagosian voices, representatives of the community. They were furious at the government. They were furious at Starmer personally and David Lammy, saying we've been ignored. Some of them directly looking at the camera and saying we have been ignored on this, and this is in not verbatim, but this is a disgrace. They were angry. They were furious.
Now, I understand that they invited members of the Labour Party to attend. Did anybody show up?
Not that I saw, no. But look, they all have jobs they want, right? So if you're seen to be campaigning against a government decision, a month after it's made, you're very unlikely to get a call saying, come to Downing Street, we want you to be a PPS or we want you to be on the front bench. It's not going to happen, so that's why they weren't there.
Okay, superb stuff. Thank you very much, Adam Cherry. And of course, after that exchange there, Sir Keir Starmer delivered a pop towards Nigel Farage. I'm glad to see you made a rare appearance here today. I thought you spent so much time in America. I'd have to put you on the immigration figures, which seems a bit rich. Starmer has been abroad for 22 days. Yeah. He's been at the Prime Minister, has been at the COP conferences, he's been on a Jeep with Macron in Paris, he's been in DC, here, there, everywhere. They seek him. Sir Keir Starmer, thank you very much. Adam Cherry, excellent stuff. Now let's move on. How many foreign nationals are claiming benefits in the United Kingdom? Well, Reform UK's Rupert Lowe says he's spoken to a whistleblower from the Department of Work and Pensions who reckons 50,000 migrants are becoming eligible for universal credit alone in the UK each and every month. Well, joining us now in the studio to talk this over is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. Now, Robert, welcome to the show. Let's go through the numbers. First of all, incredible numbers which Rupert Lowe said he obtained via a whistleblower. It totals 3,379,500 foreign-born nationals arriving in the UK since 2019 who've claimed universal credit, and the peak figure was 2021 to 22 after COVID, 941,000 in a single year. That's getting on for 4 million, but you've been crunching the numbers for us here at GB News, haven't you, to try and work out the cost. Before we get to that cost, how would you go about working that out?
Yeah, so first of all, hats off to Rupert. A lot of people have been banging their heads against a brick wall for a very long time to try and get their hands on this information. I'm actually, at the moment, stuck in a war of words with the DWP over this issue. So if we wanted to try and calculate exactly how much this would be setting us back each year, the best place to start would be to ascertain what the general makeup of the average duration that an individual stays on universal credit. And we can see that there's certain patterns that emerge over years. So we can see that last year, for instance, about 10% of those that were on universal credit were on it for up to 3 months, another 20% up to 6 months, another 20% up to 2 years, and then a third 30% on it for 1 year to 2 years. So using that kind of rough outline, that pattern, and assuming that foreign nationals don't differentiate from the native population too much, we can kind of calculate exactly how much we are being set back each year. And if you put in those numbers that Rupert found into that equation that I just set out, we found that we're probably losing about £6.5 billion every single year as a result of those foreign nationals that are claiming universal credit. And that's to say nothing of the other subsidiary benefits that are also eligible for.
Hang on, 6.5 billion quid on universal credit to people born overseas every year?
Well, it's just the foreign nationals as well. So another 40-odd% of immigrants have now been given British citizenship, so are technically not classed as foreign nationals. So this really is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's a much bigger picture. But yeah, absolutely, 6.5 billion is looking about what it will probably be costing, which is a disproportionate amount of the overall amount that we spend on universal credit each year, which I think is about 51 billion. So foreign nationals are overrepresented in that figure. But we also need to bear in mind that these are individuals that are living in the UK, and therefore they're not existing in a vacuum. They're still using public services as well. They're using the NHS. Their children are going to schools. They're being provided by services by the police and whatnot. And if we take figures that roughly suggest that that's about £12,000 spent by the government every single year per person, we can see that these people are also inflicting another £6 billion burden on the exchequer as well. So if we take those two figures together, we're looking at about £12 billion being spent by the British taxpayer every single year on people, on foreign nationals that are claiming benefits.
12 billion quid. And does that include things like housing benefit and extra stuff on top? 12 billion quid, Rob, that's 10 times the winter fuel allowance that's just been out. 10 times.
Exactly. And then you add to it things like the asylum budget, which is another 6 billion. Before you know it, we're getting pretty close to that £22 billion black hole that is doing so much to determine the current fiscal policy of this government. So we need to get very real about where we are with this immigration experiment and recognise that it hasn't been anywhere near the universal economic panacea that we were promised. And in fact, it's imposing very, very pernicious costs on the British taxpayer. And we need to really step back and look at where we are with this experiment and whether we want to continue down this route, because the Conservative Party clearly embarked on a huge lifting of visa restrictions and absolutely opened the doors. And we have, coming down the line, as more and more of these people are given settlement, the likelihood that more people will be getting recourse to public funds, and therefore this 6.5 billion figure that I've been talking about is only going to get worse.
OK, I should point out that we've contacted the Department of Work and Pensions for a statement. We're still waiting to hear back from them. We have been going to them for several hours now. I think they need to get back to us on this, and it begs the bigger question, Rob. This is probably why they don't want to publish data like this, right? We have this data in places like Denmark. We know precisely who's in jail, where they come from. We know what crimes they're committing. We know what benefits they're taking. We know how much taxes they're paying. We have full transparency. We have full transparency on this data here. It'd be bedlam. This is billions and billions of pounds unaccounted for that isn't being talked about in the public. Is this part of the problem? You've been trying multiple times to get this data out and they don't seem to want to publish it. Is it because it doesn't exist? Or is it because they just don't want to put it out there?
Well, could you imagine the absolute outrage if these figures were made public? I mean, the British public are already pretty annoyed with the way mass migration is going in this country. So if the government was to start publishing figures that had the kind of ordainment of officialdom, then I think people would be rightly very, very angry. These figures did exist. In fact, until 2020, we were seeing figures that were akin to those that are claiming benefits and those that are claiming universal credit.
But they stopped publishing them?
They just stopped publishing them. Under the Conservative government. They just decided that they could no longer compatibly and justifiably publish them, and therefore we just have these kind of figures that the public need to see sitting in the ether, and it's not too complicated to actually compile them. It's a case of bringing together two different data sets and making a simple calculation, but they are just not prepared to do that. All the while we have organisations like the ONS producing ridiculous statistics and compiling ridiculous statistics that serve no use and don't help the public debate in any way. But these really, really key issues are remaining locked in a chest and none of us have any access to them.
Do you think it's time that we had to change this? We need to have full transparency. It will help us to make decisions. It will help us to make logical deductions rather than living in a vacuum. Isn't part of the problem that if you don't have any information, people get resentful? People fill the vacuum full of misinformation. So tell us the truth.
Well, I think those of us that want to see much tougher immigration rules have already won the debate. I think the British public are almost unanimous at this point. 70% are kind of wanting to see immigration brought down. So I think the debate is already won. But what this stuff does do is, if the politicians and the political class are hell-bent on continuing down this route, it would help them make a more nuanced approach to it. Those figures that I was talking about before that were published up until 2020 showed a very clear pattern between certain nationalities being disproportionately represented in universal credit claims. And, that's the kind of thing that when you're issuing a visa, you should be taking into consideration. Same with those that are behind bars. We should be considering those nationalities that are disproportionately represented in Britain's prisons and taking that into account when we're assessing visa applications.
That's interesting stuff. Thank you very much. Rob Bates, Centre for Migration Control, and thank you as well to Adam Cherry for joining me in the studio. Thank you, gentlemen, to both of you. Now, how would you like to win your entire Christmas this year on us here at GB News? Well, we're giving you the chance to do precisely that with a bumper festive edition, the very latest Great British Giveaway. Here's the details that you need to try and win it. Now, still to come, stick around because Donald Trump is meeting Joe Biden very shortly. Live pictures there from Washington, D.C., the current president about to meet the future president of the USA. That's coming next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Ed Barker, a talented saxophonist and clarinetist from London, has had a remarkable journey in the music industry marked by significant achievements and an unusual crossover into the political sphere. Having honed his musical skills from a young age, he played in both the National Youth Orchestra and the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. In 2012, he became the solo saxophonist for pop legend George Michael. His reputation in music opened doors in politics, where he's worked with various leading Conservative members of Parliament and played a role in a number of major campaigns. To tell us more about the harmonious relationship between music and politics, I'm delighted to be joined by Ed Barker. This is quite puzzling, actually. How did a reputation in music get you into politics?
It's a good question. It's probably a question I'm still wrestling with at the age of 40. How's it happened? But somehow I've managed to do both, and I still enjoy doing them both at a high level. I think it's a simple thing of, when you're in politics, you're known as the saxophone guy, and when you're in the saxophone music industry world, you're known as the weird conservative political guy. And so it's just something people can remember you by, regardless of how good you are at either of those two things. I think it's just a device that people can kind of just latch onto to remember you.
But it's the word weird, because I imagine that most people in the music industry are probably somewhat to the left. Yeah. Certainly all the ones that I've met are. I mean, I can't imagine you and George Michael discussing Tory politics with approval, or maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I don't tend to talk politics with people kind of when I'm not in politics somehow. And whenever there are political disagreements, people kind of, I think GB News actually gets closest to kind of embodying this spirit. People are very kind of up for learning from each other's kind of experiences and views and not biting each other's heads off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:25. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now let's cross now to Washington, D.C., where moments ago Donald Trump met Joe Biden. We can see their pictures from the White House. The former foes now looking very much like the best of friends. Well, Joe Biden's smiling away. Donald Trump looks slightly more, how should we put it, considered. But he's the man who's going to be taking the big chair in January. Joe Biden on his final victory lap, stepping down. Donald Trump meeting Joe Biden there in the White House, the fire roaring away, looking very, very homely. And they're about to have more in-depth conversations soon. Of course, we'll bring you more on that as we get it. I'm joined now from New York by the US journalist and the author Nelson Aspen. Nelson, welcome to the show. So, an historic meeting, two people sworn enemies on the campaign trail. Now, of course, the handover of power is about to begin, and we're getting a huge taste of what we might get under the Trump presidency. Elon Musk, the Department of Government Efficiency, waging a war on woke, a war on waste, in defence, on borders. It looks like the Trump government is already planning to go nuclear. Tell us more.
I'm telling you, this is like the Justice League almost. And the announcements are coming so fast and furious from President-elect Trump that some people are cheering, everybody's eyebrows are raised, and the latest teaming of his former rival for his presidential run, Vivek Ramaswamy, and then, of course, his buddy Elon Musk, have announced that they are joining forces to create what is called the Department of Government Efficiency, or for short, DOGE, Doge. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Doge is also the name of Musk's favorite cryptocurrency and one of his favorite internet memes as well. So I'm sure he had a good time cooking up that title, and they are determined to cut government spending, bureaucracy, waste, and will remains to see if they can actually do that. These are not government experienced guys, but I think that's Trump's plan. He wants someone from outside the political world. These are billionaires. They are sort of self-made entrepreneurs, and that's what he wants. They will not have power to enforce, but they will have power to consult, Martin.
Isn't it astonishing, Nelson, that when we look back at Elon Musk's track record when he bought Twitter, now X, of course. He got rid of 80% of the staff. He saved $3 billion on overheads. And now it looks like he's setting his sights on similar amounts of wastage in government in America. A huge, bloated civil service. It's being called the Manhattan Project of our time. Mass redundancies, moving perhaps a lot of these departments out of DC, decentralising power, taking that grip that the unelected representatives have over power. In Britain, we have a very, very similar issue. They're called the blob over here. But we're getting a real sense, aren't we, Nelson Asman, of the direction of travel of this government, and they're not even in the White House yet.
That's right. No more woke culture, no more political correctness. They just want to get stuff done. And you mentioned formerly known as Twitter, Musk's X social media platform. And if you go there and take a look at some of his posts, you will see the tens of thousands of supportive messages. Of course, there are detractors as well. But everybody seems to be charged up about this because he has promised maximum transparency. He's asking people for their opinion. So it's actually involving citizens in ways to help cut waste. He has promised it will send shockwaves through the system for all involved when it comes to government waste. And there is a deadline, I should point out, Martin. They want all of this accomplished. They have a deadline for their mission to be July 4th of 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So the starting gun is about to go off. We'll see how much they can accomplish.
And as you said, Justice League, talk about July the 4th, 250 years old. That in itself feels like a Hollywood ending. But some of the personnel on board, Tom Homan, the new border czar, here's a guy who just won't take any of the cross-examination, any of the woke nonsense. He bats it back. He's a former patrol officer himself in his cowboy hat. He looks like he was in Chips in the 1970s. We've got Pete Hegseth. He's the new defense secretary, a Fox News anchor, a former army veteran himself. They've waged a warrior board to get rid of woke generals. No more trans nonsense, no more pronouns, no more diversity in the military. And Donald Trump has said anybody who took part in what he thinks is a shameful exercise, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, he wants a resignation on his desk by lunchtime of the first day. Nelson, if you love Trump, you're going to love this. If you hate him, it's going to be your worst nightmare.
Well, I think next thing will be MAGA capes for all of his assembled superheroes to wear. So it's going to be a fun one to watch, Martin.
Nelson Asman, thank you very, very much for joining us on the show. Just to repeat, we've got live pictures of the White House there, where inside right now, the current president on his way out of power, Joe Biden, this historic meeting with the 47th president, the next president of the United States, Donald Trump. They're currently meeting inside the White House. Of course, we'll have all of the pictures, the latest on that, as and when we get them. Now, loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including, should we kick bishops out of the House of Lords? Well, an MP from the Green Party thinks so. Sean Berry joins me next. But first, here's your latest news headlines, and it's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. The time is just after 4:30, and these are your latest headlines. Axel Rudakabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court, but was not asked to plea. The teenager appeared via video link from HMP Belmarsh, but refused to speak when he was asked to confirm his identity. Rudakabana is also charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a knife, and 2 terror-related offences. Rudakabana's trial is scheduled for January of next year. Over to the US now, and President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington. He's being hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth handover of power. The Reuters news agency has reported that Biden said he told Trump that he, quote, looks forward to a peaceful transition, whilst Trump reportedly said the following: politics is tough, but it's a nice world today. Now we're seeing live pictures of the White House in Washington, D.C., where President-elect Donald Trump is being hosted by current President Joe Biden. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs today over council tax, national insurance, contributions and the budget. The Conservative leader also pressed the PM on decisions he made at the COP29 climate summit in Baku.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister back from his trip to Azerbaijan, where he has unilaterally made commitments that will make life more experienced for everyone back home.
I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, to the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so.
Post office bosses have set out plans to fix their finances amid reports that hundreds of branches could close down. The shake-up may result in the closure of 115 branches wholly owned by the Post Office, putting more than 1,000 jobs at risk. Post Office Chairman Nigel Railton made the announcement at the company's HQ in London earlier on today, addressing postmasters across the country, as well as retail partners and Post Office staff. And legend of stage and screen actor Timothy West has died at the age of 90. His family provided the update on X, where they said that Timothy died peacefully and was with his friends and family. West starred in a wide range of roles, including long stints in both Coronation Street, EastEnders, Brass and Not Going Out. For now, those are your latest GB News headlines. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow we're back to where we have been for most of November, dry and cloudy. Kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. Quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up. So for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on. And across the northwest of Scotland, the cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry. But a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Major issues continue for the M18 this afternoon. Still blocked both sides at Thorn, Junction 6, at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision causing big queues either side. That means the southbound M18 is blocked from the M62 down to Thorn, and the eastbound M62, nothing moving at all, queuing all the way back towards the Ferry Bridge services at Junction 33. And people heading down the A1M to divert, that's slow going too. Southbound M1, 40 to 39 towards Wakefield, queuing as well. well. A breakdown blocking a lane. Still very slow south for the M6 towards Stafford North at 14. Follows an earlier collision. A breakdown as well eastbound M4 just around Reading 11. Looking slow, and on the eastbound side towards Heathrow at 4. The entry slip there is part blocked and slow. There's a broken down van. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 4:38. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, as the fallout from Justin Welby's dramatic resignation continues, one SNP MP has suggested that bishops should be kicked out of the House of Lords. Let's go live now to Lambeth Palace now and speak to GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley for all of the latest. Olivia, welcome to the show. So a dramatic call on the back of Welby's resignation yesterday to kick all of them out of the House of Lords. Tell us more.
Yes, this is quite an opportunistic move from Pete Wishart, the SNP MP. He had actually tabled this amendment to the bill to scrap hereditary peers, which would scrap bishops in the House of Lords a few weeks ago. But obviously the timing for him was ideal, because when Welby resigned, his argument in the House of Commons last night was that the Church of England needs to focus on running itself properly rather than trying to run the country. Now, that amendment was defeated last night. In fact, it only got 41 votes. But the bill pledging to scrap hereditary peers was passed. So it's likely, as long as that gets through the next hurdles in the House of Commons, that will become statute very soon. When that is the case, it is possible that that bishops in the House of Lords begin to look like they're sticking out like a sore thumb. And then I think it's quite likely that other MPs get behind the cause to get rid of bishops in the House of Commons. A couple of MPs made some pretty compelling arguments in favour of scrapping bishops in the House of Lords last night, including Gavin Williamson, who compared the situation to Iran, which he mentioned was the only other country where religious people were allowed to sit in the parliamentary chamber. I think it's very, very bad timing for the Church of England that Welby's resignation under a dark, dark cloud has come at a time when this debate is happening live in Parliament.
Thank you, Olivia Utley, live once again for us there from Lambeth Palace on the latest twist in the Justin Welby saga. And let's go live. Let's now continue this conversation. I'm now joined by the Green MP for Brighton Pavilion, Sean Berry, who voted in favour of removing bishops from the House of Lords. Sean, welcome to the show. It's a delight to have your company. A lot of people, Sean, might be surprised that bishops are even in the House of Lords at all. Tell us, how many are there? What do they do, and why are you against their presence?
Good question. How many there are? You'll have to tell your team. Will have to tell me that. But the fact is, there's a limited number of the bishops that there are who do have a place in the House of Lords, and they vote on legislation. And as has been pointed out, it is very, very unusual for any country, even one that has an official church, to have people appointed by that church in the legislation of that country. It just is extremely out of date, and they do really need to go. And the amendment yesterday was supported by a small number of MPs, but I think in principle is supported by very many others. The government did whip against that amendment. They were very determined yesterday only to get rid of the hereditary peers. They say all of this other debate is for later on and next steps. And so they did whip their members to vote against it. I think there is much more support in the House of Commons for this change than you imagine from yesterday's vote, and I think it does keep it alive as a debate that we need to have. We do need to look again at whether spiritually appointed leaders of the Church of England, which is not a democratically elected or democratically run institution, should really be voting on our laws. It just needs to go.
Yeah, I've been informed it's 26 archbishops.
I knew it wasn't all of them.
26 of them in there, which is a sizable number. It's a sizable number, 26. And a lot of us, lay people, might have been led to believe that the church and the state have been uncoupled a long time ago. In fact, I think that was 1847 when we had that clear differentiation. So it does seem something of an archaic hangover, does it not, to allow the church to have matters have a say on matters of law, Sean Berry?
No, it really does, and it's taken over 100 years for the hereditary peers to be removed after that was initially proposed. So it really should have been done a very, very long time ago. There's no reason why a very long-serving bishop, someone who's worked in the Church of England for a long time, shouldn't be elected to a new elected House of Lords based on that experience, if they can secure the votes, or under the current system why they couldn't be appointed as a peer if they absolutely deserved it. But then they would go through the new and hopefully improved appointments scrutiny that goes on. It would mean that there was a bit more control over who gets appointed and whether or not they've got real support from the people of the country. That's really what should determine who votes on our legislation in a democracy.
And Sean, of course, there's a huge conversation around members of Parliament having second jobs, bishops ostensibly having a second job in the House of Lords. You'd have thought, particularly at the moment, they've got quite a lot of work to do sorting out their own business, sorting out the state of the Church, perhaps spending less time in the Lords and more time trying to get the Church of England back from the brink of its shattered reputation.
Yeah, the Church of England needs a lot of attention, its own governance, its own, procedures when things go wrong clearly aren't in the best state, and they should certainly be focusing on that a bit more currently.
There's one thing, though, that might be in your favour, Sean, and that is the types of politics that archbishops tend to like. They're quite aligned with your own. They're big on green issues. They're big on climate change. They're big on having a voice. For example, they were very outspoken on things like Rwanda, on immigration. So do they not have a usefulness in the upper chamber to ensure that, for example, some of the spicy legislation that gets passed through from the Commons is tempered, or is that a price worth paying? They should simply go.
I'm a humanist. I'm signed up as someone who has no faith, but I have a lot of respect for faith leaders. They do consider things from a moral perspective. Most faiths have some solid values and principles to live by, as do humanists like me who devise our own principles to live by and listen to other thinkers. There's a place for church leaders in public life, but certainly not within a democracy. That is my view.
Great stuff, Sean Berry, the Green Party MP for Brighton Pavilion. Thank you very, very much for appearing on GB News today. And please come on again. An absolute pleasure to have your company. Thank you. Now, still to come, a Telegraph journalist is facing a Kafkaesque investigation for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. All the police coming for you and your post on social media. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles?
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the 2 of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rode it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at
Right.
the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:49. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson is facing an investigation for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. She claims 2 police officers called at her home on Remembrance Sunday this weekend to inform her that she was being investigated, but couldn't disclose which post was even supposedly criminal or who even her accuser was. Now, who better to discuss this than the founder and the director of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Toby, a delight to have your company again. An astonishing intrusion. Alison Pearson, one of Britain's most respected Conservative journalists, not even told what this is about. The police are at her door. What on earth is going on?
Well, I think this is an example of overzealous policing of what are reported to the police as hate crimes, often by woke activists or disgruntled neighbours. The police have a policy put in place by the College of Policing in 2014 that when someone reports a hate crime, however implausible that report might be, the police feel obliged to follow up. So it could be that, a political enemy of Alison's has reported something she said on Twitter over a year ago as potentially stirring up racial hatred. And so the police, following the advice of the College of Policing, have decided to investigate. The really alarming thing is not that anything will come of this and she'll be charged. I'd be amazed if that happened. The alarming thing is it'll probably be recorded as a non-crime hate incident, which is what the police do when they conclude, after following up one of these vexatious complaints, that there isn't in fact any crime to investigate. The threshold hasn't been met. Rather than just dismissing it, they record it often as an NCHI, and that can show up on your criminal record, believe it or not, Martin. When you apply for a job working with vulnerable people, or you apply for a voluntary job in a school, for instance, and you're required to do an enhanced criminal records check, the fact that you have committed a non-crime can show up on your criminal record and prevent you from getting the job. So it's quite serious. At the Free Speech Union, we spend a lot of time trying to get NCHIs removed from people's records. And believe it or not, we calculate that about 250,000 have been recorded in England and Wales alone since 2014, which is an average of more than 65 a year. You'd think the police would have, better things to do than police our tweets, but it's become the fashion within our police force, I'm afraid.
You're exactly right. They should be policing the streets, not policing tweets. I mean, it's not as if there isn't any serious crime to solve, but on a serious issue. Is there evidence that Conservatives are being particularly attacked with this weaponised form of law in an attempt to silence them, to cancel them, to lose their jobs altogether?
Absolutely. There's definite evidence of two-tier policing of these sorts of episodes. There was one famous example of someone having a non-crime hate incident recorded on their record, which was Amber Rudd, when she was Home Secretary, gave a speech at the Conservative Party conference in which she urged employers to prioritise British applicants as opposed to overseas workers when it came to giving jobs. And that was someone in the audience, an Oxford professor, believe it or not, I think just watched it on television, complained to Birmingham police because the conference was in Birmingham, and they recorded it as a non-crime hate incident. Last year, the Free Speech Union managed to get one removed from the record of Rachel McLean, then a Conservative MP, also the vice chairman of the Conservative Party. She described, I think, a Lib Dem candidate who was, a bloke in a wig. She described this candidate as a bloke in a wig, and that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident. Luckily, we managed to get that one removed. Another example is the former deputy leader of the Conservatives in Scotland, Murdo Fraser. He too has a non-crime hate incident recorded against his name. It's extraordinary how often Conservatives find themselves in this kind of difficulty.
Toby, thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Now, we've got a spokesperson for Essex Police has said this. The report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. Now, just to repeat that Alison Pearson will be appearing on Nigel Farage's show tonight to discuss that case exclusively. Stick around. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now here's your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow, we're back to where we have been for most of November. Dry and cloudy kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. Quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up. So for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on. And across the northwest of Scotland, the cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry. But a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. The M62 eastbound in North Yorkshire's got severe delays. It's blocked eastbound from junction 34 at Selby to junction 35 following an accident. The M6 southbound's got long delays in Staffordshire following an earlier accident. That's causing delays after junction 14 for Stafford North. Queues are back just before Stafford services. In Berkshire, the M4 eastbound is slower. Broken down vehicles closed one lane at junction 11 for Reading. Heading into Cambridgeshire, the A14 westbound, the exit slip road at junction 30 M63 for the Milton interchange is closed. That's for emergency resurfacing repairs. Surrey, the A320 Woking Road northbound, looking slow. It's blocked following an accident from Moorfield Road to Jacobswell Road. And in London, in Blackwall, Aspen Way eastbound has got long delays at East India Dock Tunnel. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, we've got some breaking news. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has ordered a Department of Health review of the costs of implementing any change in the law on assisted dying. And US President Joe Biden has welcomed Donald Trump for a meeting, as you can see on your screens, at the White House, aimed at ensuring the smooth transition of power from one leader to another. One president on his way out, one president on his way in, and not looking very happy about it. And yesterday, the Archbishop of Canterbury was forced to resign after the John Smythe sex abuse scandal became simply too big to ignore. Later on today's show, I'll be joined by Richard Gittins, one of Smythe's victims, who will bravely share his harrowing story of how he suffered at the hands of a monster who never faced justice. That's all coming in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. So the huge debate, the controversial, the divisive debate on assisted dying rolls on, and the breaking line today. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, says that there will be a review into the cost of this. Earlier on, he intimated there is no money to pay for this on the NHS, which begs the question, if this becomes law, will it simply be yet more two-tiered health for end-of-life care? The rich will be able to afford to kill themselves early, or to be put down almost early. Those who can't afford it cannot. Will this be dignitas in the UK? It's a huge debate, and we'll be discussing that next. Get your views in on that one. gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. The time is 2 minutes past 5, and these are your latest headlines. Axel Rudakabana, the teenager charged with the 3 murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon, but was not asked to plea. Our GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has more on this story.
Axel Rudakabana appeared via video link from Belmarsh Prison wearing a prison-issue grey tracksuit. He declined to speak when asked to confirm his name and other details. This is his first Crown Court appearance since 2 additional charges were added to the indictment, one a terror charge, the other relating to the production of the biological toxin ricin. He's been remanded back into custody and will appear back here on the 12th of December. The trial is due to begin on the 20th of January.
Over in the US now, and President-elect Donald Trump has been hosted by current President Joe Biden in Washington. The two sat down at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth handover of power. The Reuters news agency is reporting that during the meeting, Biden told Trump he was, quote, looking forward to a peaceful transition, whilst Trump stated that, in his words, politics is tough, but it's a nice world today. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs today over council tax, national insurance contributions and the budget. The Conservative leader also pressed the PM on decisions he made at the COP29 climate summit in Baku.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister back from his trip to Azerbaijan, where he has unilaterally made commitments that will make life more experienced for everyone back home.
I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so.
The safeguarding lead at the Church of England says abuse within is a whole church problem. That's after Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, resigned following a damning report that revealed a cover-up spanning decades. It comes as victims of John Smythe called for further resignations from senior clergy members involved in the scandal. Justin Welby announced yesterday that he was standing down after an independent review concluded Smythe could have been brought to justice if Welby had formally reported him to police more than a decade ago. Sarah Sharif's father has told jurors he takes full responsibility for the death of his 10-year-old daughter. Taxi driver Irfan Sharif made the admission under cross-examination as his wife Binesh Batul, aged 30, sobbed in the dock of the Old Bailey on Wednesday. However, speaking this afternoon, Sharif also maintained he did not murder his daughter, saying, "I did not intend to kill her." Writer and journalist Alison Pearson has revealed she is facing a police investigation for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, she said that two officers attended her home on Sunday morning to tell her she was being investigated. But when she asked what she was alleged to have posted, the officer said he couldn't disclose the information. A spokesperson for Essex Police has said the report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. And never mind the age-old question of a white Christmas, could we be in for a white November? The Met Office has announced that the UK could see a flurry of snow as early as this Sunday, as temperatures have already plummeted below zero in parts of the country. They say that Arctic winds moving southward will bring freezing weather, along with it, what they call the possibility of snow. Maybe things will be white a lot sooner than we expected. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Soph Reaper. More from me in the next half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophie. Now, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, will carry out a review of the costs of implementing any change in the law on assisted dying. The Cabinet Minister, who plans to vote against the assisted dying bill when it is debated later this month, has suggested that there may need to be cuts to other NHS services if the changes are brought in. Well, for some more analysis on this now, let's bring in our reporter, Adam Cherry, who joins me in the studio in Westminster. Adam, welcome back to the studio. So, hugely divisive debate. The vote is expected soon, but something that Wes Streeting mentioned earlier on today is the cost of this, because, of course, it could be very, very costly. Now there's a review into that, and there's been talk already. If this isn't funded by the NHS, then people will have to fund it themselves, with a very clear implication this could be a two-tiered system.
Yeah, that, or that they'll have to take funding from other areas of the NHS, which of course will be controversial in and of itself. So I'll just read out the quote from the Health Secretary, which has just landed in the last couple of minutes. Now that we've seen the bill published, I've asked my department to look at the costs that would be associated with providing a new service to enable assisted dying to go forward. I'm very clear that regardless of my own personal position, we know he's going to vote against it, my department and the whole government will respect the will of Parliament if people vote for assisted dying. Asked about the costs, so will there be providing a cost-benefit analysis on this? The work is now underway. I can't give you a precise figure today of what it will cost to implement, but clearly there may have to be sacrifices. I'm praising him a little bit there. He also talks about the slippery slope argument. So will people feel a pressure, elderly people feel a pressure to go down this road rather than relying on palliative care or relying on further treatment if they know that it's cheaper? So we have a clip actually from an interview earlier with Jake Richards, who was a Labour MP, and he was asked about this topic on the show earlier today. So let's take a look at that now.
Streeting, your health secretary, the nation's health secretary, is opposed to the arguments that you have just made. But he made an additional point this morning, which is there is no NHS budget for this to happen. So if this law is passed and there is money made available to make assisted dying possible, there's got to be money taken from elsewhere. That's a powerful point, isn't it, from your health secretary?
I just disagree with Wes on this. I mean, if you look at some of where this has happened in other foreign jurisdictions around the world, 300 million people, by the way, have access to some form of assisted dying. There's been no cost for the taxpayer, and I don't think that's the situation here. Actually, I hope that this change would bring about extra spending in palliative care, because one of the issues I don't think it's an either-or. In fact, I think if we bring about this change, it will put a renewed emphasis to ensure that people facing the end of their life get the best possible care so they don't have to make this difficult decision.
And I agree with
So there you go. I mean, you're going to have a real argument within the centre of government about this. It feels like this has been announced today by the Health Secretary, really to make a political point, to say, look, you want to vote against this, I'm voting against this, here's the cost of what you're asking for. We don't know how the Prime Minister is going to vote, although when this was put to the House in 2015, he voted for it. Whether he does the same this time wouldn't be the first time he's changed his position on a matter of conscience or a big issue. So we're not sure. But Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary and the Justice Secretary, several other members of the front bench are opposed to this. You saw there from Jake Richards. There are strong voices on the supportive side as well. So I think it'll be very close, regardless of whichever way it goes. It's going to be a tight one. Yeah, thank you, Adam Tryon. Stick with us, but I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by the former Health Secretary, Therese Coffey, in the studio here in Westminster. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. Now, may I ask you your personal position on this highly controversial topic?
I voted against it in 2015. In fact, I was the chief whip at the time of the team getting this against, and more than half the House turned up to vote it down. I don't think the arguments have particularly changed since then. It's still the same issues about safeguards or is this the right direction? People who want the bill don't think the bill that Kim has put forward is anywhere near enough to satisfy their ambitions. So I can just see, hopefully, the same outcome, that people think this is still a step too far to go. But to be candid, frankly, I don't think the NHS should be paying for it, even if the government, even if Parliament does pass it through.
Why do you think that? I mean, if it's passed as law, if it is the responsibility, it becomes the responsibility of the state to implement government policy, why should the NHS not pick up the tab?
Well, it wouldn't be government policy. It'd simply be a law that amends actually the Suicide Act. So it would enable something which is not lawful today to happen. That doesn't automatically mean that the NHS should just now undertake those sorts of activities. However, today Wes has been talking a lot more about reforms of the NHS. There's been a huge amount of funding. I'd have thought the last thing that people want is for that money to go into ending lives early, as opposed to potentially what we're seeing in the hospice care system at the moment, where hospices are worried about whether they'll still be going this time next year with all the other changes like the national insurance rises.
And yet we are living longer. Typically, as a society, end-of-life care is the most expensive phase of the NHS's bill. Am I being dreadfully cynical when this could be put forward as a cost-saving measure to end lives earlier, as well as the humane argument, which, of course, the more liberal side put forward? Is it a way of ridding the government of its social care bill?
Well, I don't think anybody would be advocating that as an argument to do it, but there is too much of people feeling a burden on not only their families but society more broadly But this comes through to some of the things that the Wes is trying to do today in tackling backlogs and holding people to account. If we think during COVID, when the NHS was on permanent emergency alert, a lot of people stayed away because they didn't want to be a burden on the NHS. So they took on that extra pain that they were having, and it's now taken a lot longer, for example, for them to get their knee replaced or their hip replaced. And although we've actually seen a significant improvement in productivity in the last 6 months, there's a long way to go. I know that. And that's why I don't think we should be distracted about these things about assisted suicide coming into law, certainly not on the NHS. But we need to make sure that we see that NHS leadership really step up to the plate right across the country and put patients first in delivering. And that's why, actually, today, Martin, I want, actually, Wes Streeting succeed. It may sound unusual for an ex-Conservative Health Secretary to say that. But if we're interested in the care of patients, then we are. I think the reality is, will he really deliver? And has he, frankly, got the not only the desire, will he actually really deliver? And I think that's still a massive question, which, you know, frankly, if he fails to, with his majority as it is, being a Labour Secretary of State, if he delivers it, amazing. If he fails, frankly, he'll have wasted a massive opportunity.
Very magnanimous of you to say that about Wes Streeting. He has intimated that he'd like to be more radical in how he reforms the NHS. He said it's on life support, it needs urgent treatment. He hints that that may involve something which Nigel Farage seems to quite like, this idea of a part privatisation model, or at least contributing if you can afford it. Tony Blair started this ball rolling, and he's constantly said that both those on the right and the left he will head down. Now, presumably he means on the left, the unions. They won't like the notion of there being any method of paying for point of care. Do you think that he would like there to be a part privatised model? And is that something that you would welcome?
I haven't seen that, and I think, you know, candidly, the British public just isn't interested in that model.
But
there's
it might
already
be if there's less waiting lists, if you can get an appointment soon, if you can pay to get away from that, and lessen the burden elsewhere.
People already, and I'll use the word choice carefully, because actually there are parts of the country where, especially getting dentistry, they are dental deserts.
Yeah.
So people have no other choice but to pay. And this is one of the things where I think the devil is in the detail, and what I'm not yet seeing from Wes is what level he's prepared to go to. So it's all well and good saying you're going to fire people and all the rest of it. For a start, he hasn't got the legal powers to do that. Now, Amanda Pritchard, to some extent, has mechanisms she can do that. But it used to be the case when I was an MP here and lived in Westminster, I could get 7 NHS dentists within a mile. The place where I represented, you had to travel about 25 to 30 miles on the chance you might be able to get access to an NHS dentist, and probably even further. And that, for me, is where, talking about a local NHS, a neighbourhood health service, that's where the real detail and delivery has to be done for this to be meaningful of what Wes has set out today. And as it stands, I'm not seeing that level of detail, and I hope it comes next May when he talks about his plan. But if it's just more platitudes and just more, you know, everything's broken, actually large parts of the NHS are working pretty well. But in people's experiences, it doesn't feel like that. And that's what needs to change, so that when you are having your local incident, that you're not waiting at any A&E for 10 hours to be seen and be treated accordingly.
Okay, Teresa Coffey, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Of course, the former Health Secretary there, and you also, Adam Cherry. Thank you to both of you. Now, one of the victims of the serial abuser, John Smythe, says the Archbishop of Canterbury's resignation paves the way for others to be held accountable. Richard Gittins joins me next here on GB News. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, and engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all 3 of them, through a thing called Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early and especially about talking, getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:20. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, as the fallout from Justin Welby's dramatic resignation continues, abuse survivors are calling for further resignations from the Church of England. And even though its most senior cleric has now gone, questions remain as to how much the senior members of church knew about John Smythe's abuse of young boys. I'm now joined by a survivor of John Smythe, Richard Gittins. Richard, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. Thank you so much for spending the time to speak to us. May I first get your reaction to that resignation yesterday? There was a feeling it was inevitable, yet it seemed that Justin Welby was reluctant to stand down. But when he did, how did that make you feel?
I think overall pleased. The main reason, I'm not saying I wanted to see him resign, but I did think he should. The main reason I was pleased was because it backed up his apology that he'd made earlier on. An apology without any actions isn't a real apology. But now that he's resigned, I feel much more confident that he is truly sorry about not pushing forward the information that he had back in 2013 to the police.
And Richard Gittins, may I ask you about that? Because we've been saying here on GB News for so long that crucial missing period of when allegedly it was known that Justin Welby was first told, even back in the 80s, he was first mentioned to him, but certainly in 2013, it now appears, there was enough evidence to pursue John Smythe. That didn't happen. And John Smythe, of course, died in 2018, having never been brought to justice. So, Richard, how did that make you feel?
Well, I'm a little bit different from my other fellow victims. I don't hold any grudge against the Archbishop. I don't actually feel any grudge against John Smythe, which might sound a bit strange. I was very fortunate in many ways. In the second year at Cambridge, when I was being beaten, that I failed my exams. And although that was bad in a way, it meant that I left the whole scene and started rebuilding my life in Manchester. So I've thought about this. I've had quite a lot of interviews recently, and I've probably given mixed messages. At the moment, I'm not actually calling for any bishops to resign. I am asking for a process to take place, which will probably have to be within the church, for them to report back to us exactly what has gone on. I mean, I know we've got the Making report, and I know that tells us a lot, but I think it's up to the church now to get together, find out what went wrong. If some people feel that they really have let us down, then I think they should resign. But I'm not making or passing any judgments. However, if you spoke to different victims, you might get a different point of view.
And Richard, can you cast your mind back to when you first met John Smythe? How did your lives come together? How did they collide? And then what came to pass?
Well, I think I was being my first year at university. I was an evangelical Christian. I wanted to become a better evangelical Christian, sharing the news of Jesus's death and resurrection. I'm no longer a Christian. I'm not trying to propose that message now. But the meeting of John Smythe was bizarrely in a way to improve my commitment to God. And I was groomed by him. I didn't realize what I was letting myself into. But I feel that I need to say that because there are many young evangelical Christians today who will be wanting to do the same thing as me, and I don't want them to fall into the same trap. Did that answer your question?
It does, and you've talked about how he beat you. How did those situations arise? You were there to learn about God, to learn about Jesus. How did the situation get to that point where he became such an abuser to you?
Well, I should try and explain that. It's quite hard. He came to Christian Union meeting in the college. He wasn't from the college. And he gave a talk. And afterwards, a friend of mine who was from Winchester College and who was already involved in the beatings suggested I talk to him. And during that meeting, we highlighted 7 or 8 areas of my life that weren't quite, shall I say, on fire for God. And would I mark those areas with the beating, which would be just one stroke for each sin, if I can call it that. And I went along with that, quite happy with that. And then it's a long story, but basically through the second year, I was going down for a beating every 3 weeks, and the severity increases. But I was already hooked into this. And I sometimes think the relief that you feel after a beating is so great that it feels like you're closer to God. I suspect it was just relief. But at the time, I thought, I'm getting closer to God. My life's improving. And so I was hoodwinked throughout the whole of that year. And I can understand how my fellow victims were also hoodwinked.
And so, Richard, the severity of the beatings increased, the frequency increased. And I mean, how bad did it get? And how did you get to the mindset where you were able to get away from that situation or remove yourself? What happened?
Well, I failed my exams. So I was sent down from the college. And then it was agreed that it was too far to travel from Manchester all the way down to Winchester. And so I just sort of escaped, I think is probably the best phrase.
And when you said, it will sound remarkable to people, you say you're no longer a Christian. I mean, heaven knows how you had your faith tested by John Smythe and what you were put through. But you said you bear no malice, that you have a sense of forgiveness. Richard, how did you get to that point? It's an astonishing thing to say.
Well, it's not that astonishing because it's a very forefront message of the church, of Christians, is to forgive. And I can't think offhand of any, but some of the most wonderful people in the world were the ones who were able to forgive. And I feel like I'm doing preaching the gospel here, but it actually wasn't that difficult for me. But I kind of feel it was because I was removed from the situation by that helped, I think.
And do you believe in forgiveness? You've had that sense of forgiveness yourself. Do you believe in concepts of heaven or hell. May I ask you something like that? Where do you think John Smythe belongs?
I really don't care where he belongs. I think there's a concept of hell on earth, certainly, and probably heaven on earth. I don't believe in an afterlife. I believe in living a good life and a moral life, and I don't always manage to achieve that in my own life. So, yeah.
And Richard, you said that you have a different mindset, perhaps from some other of John Smythe survivors and victims. You've connected with them, you've spoken with them. I mean, what kind of ways has Smythe's abuse affected some of those other people?
Well, it's affected, I know of 2 or 3 who has affected much more than it has affected me. One has tried to commit suicide twice. Another one has had to have counselling pretty much over the last few decades. I don't actually know how long. And it wouldn't be for me to say that they're not right in wanting the bishops to resign. I'm just giving you my own personal point of view.
And Richard, moving on from John Smythe passing away and the Archbishop of Canterbury resigning yesterday, of course, thoughts now must turn to making sure that nothing like this can ever happen again. Richard, how much faith do you have that the church can become a truly safe space for people like you when you were a young lad?
It's tricky because the whole nature, particularly of evangelical Christianity, is to give your life over to God, and it's not too difficult for some bad players to get in there and to do what John Smythe did, because particularly young people are idealistic. They want to do the best, and so their minds are open to being swayed into this kind of thing. So I know they're working very hard behind the scenes to improve the safeguarding process. But there is a sense of, and which I can agree with this, that perhaps this process of sorting it out should have started 7 years ago when the Channel 4 news programme broke. And it's a bit frustrating to not see any progress. I mean, I think the safeguarding on the grassroots level has improved massively, and I think the Archbishop should be congratulated on that. But we're not getting the information perhaps that we want from the church, if I can put it that way.
And Richard, where you have that situation where boys, young people, young men want to give themselves to God, sometimes absolutely, and you have predatory men, you have that opportunity, you have that interface. Do you fear that this is something that may always be an issue for the church?
At the moment, that's the way I think, yes.
OK. Richard Gittins, thank you very, very much for joining us on the show today and sharing your experiences. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's an incredible story of forgiveness. Thank you very, very much, Richard Gittins. Now, as Justin Welby stepped down, he released a statement saying this: "I hope this decision makes clear how seriously the Church of England understands the need for change and our profound commitments to creating a safer church. As I step down, I do so in sorrow with all victims and survivors of abuse." There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson is facing a police investigation over an ex-post from last year. Is she the latest victim of two-tier policing? And of course, as you can see on your screen, she will appear on tonight's Nigel Farrell show from 7 p.m. this evening. But before that, it's time for your latest news headlines. And here's Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Martin. Let's take a look at the stories for this hour. Axel Rudikabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court this afternoon, but was not asked to plea. The teenager appeared via video link from HMP Belmarsh, but refused to speak when he was asked twice to confirm his identity. Rudakabana is also charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a knife, and 2 terror-related offences: the production of biological toxin ricin and the possession of a PDF entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. Rudakabana's trial is scheduled for January of next year. Over to the US now, and President-elect Donald Trump has been hosted by current President Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. The two sat down at the White House this afternoon for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth handover of power. The Reuters news agency is reporting that during the meeting, Biden told Trump he was, quote, looking forward to a peaceful transition, whilst Trump stated that, in his words, politics is tough, but it's a nice world today. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs today over council tax, national insurance contribution and the budget. The Conservative leader also pressed the PM on decisions he made at the COP29 climate summit in Baku.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Prime Minister back from his trip to Azerbaijan, where he has unilaterally made commitments that will make life more experienced for everyone back home.
I'm very proud of the fact that we're restoring leadership on climate to this country, to the UK, because that will be measured in lower bills on energy independence and the jobs of the future. And in relation, and she may have missed, but on Monday I was very pleased to announce a huge order into jobs in Hull for blades for offshore wind. If she's opposed to that sort of action, she should go to Hull and say so.
Elsewhere in politics now, Wes Streeting has ordered a Department of Health review of the cost of implementing any change in the law on assisted dying. The Health Secretary, who plans to vote against the assisted dying bill when it's debated later this month, has suggested there may need to be cuts to other NHS services if the changes are brought in. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
But first, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2740 and €1.1990 euros. The price of gold is £2,047.66 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,010 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow we're back to where we have been for most of November. Dry and cloudy kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. It's quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up, so for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on, and across the northwest of Scotland. The cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry, but a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. Starting off in South Yorkshire, the M18 northbound is stationary. It's blocked at junction 6 for Fawn following an accident. In the East Riding, the M18 southbound stationary. It's blocked by a multi-vehicle accident from the M62 interchange to junction 6. Cheshire, the M62 eastbound's got queues of broken down vehicles. Closed a lane from junction 11 at Birchwood to 12 for the Eccles interchange. Into Surrey, the M23 northbound's got queues. It's after an earlier breakdown from junction 9 at Gatwick Airport to junction 8 for the M25 interchange. In Devon at Dawlish, Exeter Road, the A379 is closed in both directions because of a serious accident. In London, in Ealing, Old Oak Road, both ways has been closed from Shaftesbury Gardens and Channelgate Road, and that's because of an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:38. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, the Daily Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson is facing an investigation for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post made last year. She claims 2 police officers called out to her home on Remembrance Sunday this weekend to inform her that she was being investigated, but couldn't disclose what the post was even about, or even if it was supposedly criminal, or even who her accuser was. It's truly Kafkaesque. It's astonishing. And I'm joined now in the studio by the Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikolova. Anna, welcome to the studio. A pleasure to have your company. Now, these non-crime hate incidents, as they're called, they were meant to have gone away. Harry Miller took the Crown to court. He won, and yet Toby Young, the president of the Free Speech Union, was on the show earlier saying as many as 250,000 of these things are out there. And in this instance, he reckons clearly a Conservative journalist being targeted. What on earth is going on?
What on earth is going on? As you say, the understanding was that this was a thing of the past. I remember having many conversations with Conservative ministers at the time who said that their priority was to stop this nonsense in the Home Office, stop this nonsense in the police. I mean, you have to call a spade a spade. They failed. This is what they could have done on their time, and they absolutely did not sort it out. And now, surprise, surprise, the guidance that was put in, although that it still allowed the targeting of Alison Pearson, even that now reportedly is going to be wound back by Yvette Cooper.
And the incredible thing about this is that they don't have to tell you what the complaint is. You can never find out who made the complaint. Somebody can make a complaint simply because they feel that they've been affronted or offended. But as you know, Anna, this can stay against your name. It will appear on a background check and it can destroy reputations, it can destroy lives, it can cost people their jobs.
Yeah, sadly, I mean, this sort of reporting on people is part of human nature. It's always been around, but I think it has got worse. There are certain factors that are encouraging it. The anonymity of social media, this feeling that you can say anything about anyone. And also, I think, what happened during COVID when the government specifically encouraged people to report on their neighbours.
To snitch.
And to snitch. I think that's done something to the collective mind frame that some people think this kind of behaviour is OK. But it is absolutely not OK. And even setting aside that morality, I mean, let's look at it. Let's say, give the police the benefit of the doubt in this case. Even then, they've taken a year to act on something where their whole argument was, if it's that serious, it could have incited someone. Well, if it's that serious, why did you wait a year even? So it falls down on every single criteria.
And when you look into the data, what's truly incredible, we know that there's a boom in anti-Semitism, and there's actually been a 25% increase in these things, these NCHI, non-crime hate incidents, post-October the 7th, of course, last year, and the vast majority of those have been anti-Semitic. Now, Alison Pearson has been very outspoken in her support of Israel, very outspoken in talking about lockdowns, very outspoken around a lot of things a lot of people, you might call them woke, don't like. So she's made herself a tall poppy, and she's a journalist with one of the most respected newspapers in the Western world. It just goes to show that perhaps nobody is safe.
No, it's very chilling. And, I mean, at least today we have had Elon Musk, who obviously owns X or Twitter, saying this has to stop. But I think the sad truth is that's only going to spur the government on, because Elon Musk has specifically taken on Labour and Keir Starmer several times in his comments and gone quite publicly against them. And they seem to delight in that because it plays to the gallery of Labour supporters and voters. So I don't see. I mean, I think one positive is this has certainly brought this back into the public sphere, and there are people who are up in arms against it, who are obviously defending Alison Pearson. There are people who are joining the Free Speech Union off the back of it. So perhaps there will be some sort of shift, but I think the truth is the police are still going to be encouraged to do it. Anna,
Britain is the home of Speaker's Corner. The foundations, the Magna Carta, the laws, the bastions of free speech were set in this land, yet we seem to have a Prime Minister who puts people in prison for social media posts. Elon Musk got involved in that. We have these non-crime hate incidents now being weaponised against journalists. Is Britain's standing on the world stage being diminished by these absurd laws that now makes it seem actually free speech is greatly under threat in our country?
I think it is under threat. I don't think it is just in Britain, but you're completely right. You know, it is the home of Speaker's Corner. Sadly, I think those values are increasingly diminished as people understandably become afraid to speak their mind. I mean, look at Kirsty Allsop. So it's a very similar, I think, case where she posted about her son going on a gap year earlier in the year, and someone anonymously reported her to social services, and social services actually thought that was reason to go around to her house to contact her and to take it up. Now, what kind of society does that when, at the same time, car crime isn't being investigated, thefts aren't being investigated, burglaries, fraud,
knife
all
crime,
of this is just
muggings,
seen as below the threshold, frankly.
Yeah, real crime. Police the streets and not tweets. But you know Alison Pearson, she's not going to take this lying down. In fact, she's on Nigel Farage's show tonight. You think perhaps they've bitten off more than they can chew with her, because she will certainly come out fighting?
Well, I think she writes that in that exchange, the Kafkaesque exchange with the two police officers, they themselves seem to be a little confused about why they were there and what the complaint was about. I mean, they must have known who she was, and they must have known the can of worms they're opening up by doing this to a journalist. So, yes, I think she will take this on and fight the cause.
You certainly will. Thank you very much, Anna Miklova. That's the Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, and a spokesperson for Essex Police has said this. The report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of that investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November the 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. And just to repeat, tonight, Alison Pearson will be appearing live on GB News in this very studio. She joins Nigel Farage from 7 p.m. this evening. To get her side of the story, tune in. It's going to be a lively exchange. Now, GB News' political editor Chris Hobe is back after his trip to Baku following Sir Keir Starmer around on that COP29 jamboree. We'll get the latest from him next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and for the next nearly 400 years had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now it's time now to reveal the results of our GB News poll of the day. And today we asked, is Sir Keir Starmer right to commit the UK to cutting greenhouse gases by 81%? Well, a measly 2% of you say yes. 2% of you agree with the Prime Minister. A monstrous 98% say no. We should keep the greenhouse gases as they are. Now, you keep up with all the usual polls in the usual way, gbnews.com/poll. Now, I'd like to say I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' political editor Chris Hope, who's back from Baku in Azerbaijan after following jet-set Sir Keir Starmer to the COP29 conference. Chris, let's get a wonderful picture of you on screen. Of course, you did a link with us live. There's the president of Azerbaijan in the background. It looks like one of those, dare I say, one of those dictatorial oil paintings of somebody who should be crossed at thy peril.
Well, the manager of the hotel was very pleased that we had that cut. Because what happens when you go on these world tours with the PM, you're very privileged to do it. Yeah. But we landed at back at 11 o'clock at night in Baku, 7 o'clock at night for your show Monday night, wasn't it? And so it was trying to just get the flavour. We're trying to get something to locate us where we were. And there's this great picture of the leader behind. And we ended Hall for yourself, so you had like a huge moustache sort of perched on your shoulder. But on a serious point, COP29, what was the point? Nobody turned up apart from Keir Starmer. Yeah, well, Maloney was there for the G7, of course, the Italian Premier, but he was the only other member of the G7. That's just a chance for him to strut his stuff on the international stage. We did ask him, actually, by the end of the G20, we expect him to go to Brazil next week. He'll have been out of the country for 22 days out of 77 since the start of September. And I said to him, we asked him we call it a huddle on the flight over with the PM, what on earth, what are you doing? You know, which is there and Baku again. Yeah. You know, we're barely there. It's a 24-hour trip to 2,500 miles there, 2,500 miles back, let alone how that looks with given you trying to cut greenhouse emissions. The carbon footprint of a small country. But so why are you here, Keir Starmer? And he said, well, his two key priorities, he told us, are the economy and border security. And he uses this time abroad with world leaders to press the case for our economy, investing in Britain and border security. That's, of course, for us, it's small boats. For other countries in Italy and elsewhere, big issues also there. And so he tries to make the case, I think, of backing what matters to, I would argue, to GB News viewers and all voters in this country. And he's aware of that. And for me, without being too Westminster bubbly about it, I see a bit of the influence of Morgan McSweeney, who no one's heard of outside of Westminster, but really important. He's the guy who constructed this huge win for the Labour Party at the election. And with Sue Gray gone, we now know she won't take up her role as envoy for nations and regions. You've got this political person there, and almost a response to Donald Trump's win last week.
Yeah, and
why are you doing this? And he is almost saying to himself, Keir Starmer, after 4 months in role, I need to be focused on what the people want, not necessarily what others say.
I wonder if that's going to wash. Nigel Farage today at PMQ's asked about Chagos Islands, and Keir Starmer said, "Oh, it's great to see you back in England, Nigel. You've been in America." Jet-set Starmer, right. 22 days out of 77, are people going to buy that message? He's trying to sort the small boats problem by being mid-air on a private jet.
Well, his case is that the Rwanda plan wasn't going to work, so he killed it. His role is reaching out into the global community and finding common cause with other big countries, and that's why he's doing these visits, and he's using going to COP to press the flesh and make that point. So I think he's clearly had to think post. I mean, Trump's win was all about immigration and all about really the economy. And I think he's bought a bit of the Trump, whatever it is, Kool-Aid, drank the Kool-Aid, the Gatorade.
When you were in Azerbaijan, did you get a flavour yourself, and maybe perhaps growing a nice bushy moustache?
my face is free of facial fuzz, Martin. Well, it is Movember, so if you want to grow a moustache, this is the month. It's cancer awareness.
Magnificent. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris, over that quick whistle-stop tour from your jet-set lifestyle, joining us here in the studio. Thank you very much. Great to have you back. Now, of course, Jubes and Co's up next. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Don't forget, Alison Pearson on Nigel Farage's show tonight about that non-crime hate incident arrest. You'll not want to miss it. Thanks for joining me tonight. But now, here's your weather, and it's Alex Deacon. Can we get the hand?
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Changes are on the way with the weather, but for tomorrow, we're back to where we have been for most of November, dry and cloudy. Kind of sums it up. It has been fine and sunny for some today, but this weather front pushing south will bring a lot more cloud with it. We've still got high pressure. That's the dominant feature, and that is keeping things fairly dry. As I say that, though, with that weather front slipping south, there will still be some drizzle here and there as this band pushes its way southwards across parts of the Midlands and eastern England, and some drizzle in the northwest of Scotland through the early hours. But for most, it's going to be a dry night. Quite a lot of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up. So for many, a milder night than last night. It does mean a duller start to tomorrow, particularly across the south, where there'll still be some drizzle early on. And across the northwest of Scotland, the cloud will thick enough at times here over the Highlands and the Western Isles for a few spots of drizzle. Some breaks in the cloud will allow temperatures to dip away through central Scotland. Could also allow some fog patches to form, which may take a while to clear. Quite a dull start for Northern Ireland, but quite a mild start here. In fact, generally, temperatures in double figures across parts of England and Wales to start the day. Still some of that light rain and drizzle affecting the far south of England. So a different feel here compared to what we've seen today. But at least the rain and drizzle should fizzle out. And I'm actually hopeful for some brighter skies coming in over the Midlands, eastern England. Better chance of seeing some sunny spells come the afternoon. And parts of eastern Scotland may also cheer up with a bit of sunshine. We should see those temperatures just getting into the teens once more, where it's cloudy, 11 or 12 generally. But the wind's pretty light. Not a great deal of change as we go through Thursday evening. We'll continue with some drizzly rain in the northwest, elsewhere most places dry, but a change is on the way as we go through Friday into the weekend. The high pressure gets pushed out of the way by this weather front, which swings across the country late on Friday and into Saturday. It's a cold front, so it's going to turn colder.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Moore. South Yorkshire, the M18 northbound remains blocked following an accident at junction 6 for Thorn. That's causing queues on the approach. Into Cheshire, the M62 eastbound's got queues of broken down vehicles, closed one lane from junction 11 at Birchwood to 12 for the Eccles interchange. Into Buckinghamshire, the M25 anti-clockwise has got long delays. An accident's closed the lane at junction 16 for the M40. Queues are back to junction 17 for Maple Cross. In Devon at Dawlish, the A379 Exeter Road has been closed in both directions. That's because of a serious accident. London and Ealing, Old Oak Lane is blocked both ways between Shaftesbury Gardens and Channelgate Road following an accident. And in South Wales and Newport, the M4 Bringlass Tunnels westbound has got delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. Coming up tonight, you're fired. That might be the message soon to failing bosses as league tables will be introduced to the NHS. Is that enough, though, to fix its woes? And in a move that some call genius, though others call a farce, Elon Musk has been appointed to slash bureaucracy in the States. Personally, I think it's an amazing idea. Let's get some of our best entrepreneurs here to do the same in this country. No? And an MP has called for a Gaza family visa scheme to bring people from Gaza to their families here. Is this a good suggestion? Should we implement it or not? And get this, everybody, a UK journalist is under police investigation for something that she wrote on Twitter a year ago. Apparently, it offended someone. What is this country coming to? Keeping me company till 7 o'clock tonight. Look at my panel, everyone. Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Conservative peer and former member of the European Parliament, and a new face, Dr. Krish Kandia, the OBE as well, cultural commentator. But first, before we get stuck in, let's cross live for tonight's 6 o'clock news headlines.
Thank you, Michelle. The time is just after 6, and these are your latest GB News headlines. Axel Rudikabana, the teenager charged with the murders of 3 children in Southport earlier this year, has appeared for a plea and preparation hearing at Liverpool Crown Court, but was not asked to plea. Our GB News Home and Security editor, Mark White, has more on this story.
Axel Rudikabana appeared via video link from Belmarsh Prison wearing a prison-issue grey tracksuit. He declined to speak when asked to confirm his name and other details. This is his first Crown Court appearance since 2 additional charges were added to the indictment, one a terror charge, the other relating to the production of the biological toxin ricin. He's been remanded back into custody and will appear back here on the 12th of December. The trial is due to begin on the 20th of January.
Over to the US now, and President-elect Donald Trump was hosted by current President Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. The two sat down at the White House for a meeting designed to demonstrate a smooth handover of power. The Reuters news agency is reporting that during the meeting, Biden told Trump he was, quote, looking forward to a peaceful transition, whilst Trump stated that, in his words, politics is tough, but it's a nice world today. Post office bosses have set out plans to fix their finances amid reports that hundreds of branches could be closing down. The shake-up may result in the closure of 115 branches wholly owned by the Post Office, putting more than 1,000 jobs at risk. Post Office Chairman Nigel Railton made the announcement at the company's HQ in London earlier on today, addressing postmasters across the country, as well as retail partners and Post Office staff. And writer and journalist Alison Pearson has revealed she is facing a police investigation. That's for allegedly stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, she said that 2 officers attended her home on Sunday morning to tell her she was being investigated. But when she asked what she was alleged to have posted, the officer said he couldn't disclose that information. A spokesperson for Essex Police has said the report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. As part of the investigation, officers attended an address on Sunday, November 10th, to invite a woman to attend a voluntary interview on the matter. And if you'd like to hear more on this story, Alison will be speaking to Nigel Farage on his show tonight from 7. But for now, those are the latest GB News headlines. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. There is a lot we will be discussing, worry not. That story that you've just been hearing there about the UK journalist. What is this country coming to, everybody? Are you an active tweeter? Do you lay in your bed at night wondering whether or not you will potentially get a knock at the door for some of the stuff that you have been posting in the past? I'll be coming on to that topic before the end of the programme, worry not. Alongside me, I've got my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer and former member of the European Parliament, and a new face to the panel, we like those. Dr Krish Kandaya, the OBE and cultural commentator. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. As every single one of you at home, you know the drill. Get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go on Twitter or X if you dare, and you can reach me there. Or you can, of course, go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay. But look, wherever you're watching or listening, you're very, very welcome tonight. Let's kick off then with yet another conversation. We seem to have these all the time, don't we, about how to fix the NHS. Wes Streeting, he reckons he's got the answers. Let's listen.
Dar's investigation into the NHS concluded, and I quote, that the problem is not too many managers, but too few with the right skills and capabilities. And let me tell you, that is not the most convenient conclusion for a politician to receive. I could be no more popular than announce the sacking of lots of managers. But that would not be the right thing to do. And I'm prepared to make an unpopular argument with the public about the value of good leaders.
Right, so there you go. League tables and things like that. Is this the answer that we've all been waiting for, Jacqueline?
Well, it's a bit like déjà vu. I think we've been talking about league tables and whatever over the last 20 years. They haven't made a great deal of difference. The problem is with the NHS, that's not the frontline medics. I know a number of them, and they are absolutely brilliant. It's the entire structure, and it needs... I have advocated for a long time that we need to look at something like we have in Australia or across Europe, and that's a sort of a public-private type system. The NHS employs 1.4 million people. We know that there are roughly 750,000 are administrators and managers, and of course you've got to have admin people, but it appears people are sort of promoted from within. There is nepotism, and there are people promoted to jobs where really they don't have the experience when you are running something the size of a hospital. And what has lacked, I think, over the years, it is a reactionary service rather than looking, to see what they can prevent. And in addition, there's issues when people do try and raise issues about shortcomings and patient care, then we have the issue over whistleblowers. So,
Krish?
I agree with a lot what the Baroness said. Preventative medicine is definitely something we need more of. It's only really dental care that we take preventative care of, don't we? That we try to brush our teeth.
Well, if you can get into a dentist, yeah.
You're right. But I remember in lockdown, Thursday nights, we were out clapping for carers. We recognised the value of our NHS. This feels a little bit tone-deaf to me, that an NHS that has kept us alive during the most difficult times in our history is now being told, step up or we're going to punish you. We've seen what league tables have done and these one-word commendations that were in Ofsted. I'm a bit nervous. This seems a bit heavy-handed to me.
I mean, I've got to say, I think these one-word accommodations in Ofsted were absolutely fantastic. I think the getting rid of them was absolutely ridiculous, and it makes parents' lives a lot harder when you're trying to choose a school. But notwithstanding that, surely you must think that people should need to step up and deliver and perform and be slashing the waiting lists, no, in the NHS?
I definitely think we need reform, but the style of that reform sounds like we're coming after you, we're going to punish you. And I think the NHS has been through so much recently, they need a little bit of encouragement.
What's it been through?
We had the most unbelievable pandemic, didn't we? Where our NHS were the front line. People were watching life and death happen in front of them, working every hour that you imagine.
Sorry. Well, she's on her phone. That was
phoning Wes Street.
I was going to check something with the NHS.
she's like saying that she's on her own. She's on her own at Ireland, this one. Anyway, carry on. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
We saw our NHS step up and we recognised the national treasure that they were. That's why we were clapping on a Thursday night, weren't we? We recognised they were essential workers, they were keeping us alive, and they were coping with incredibly difficult budgets. And now here we come and we're telling them off for not performing well.
No, I think we've got to come in here. The NHS is not short of money. This new government, they've thrown another several billion in there. And while we were in government over that 14 years, the amount of money that has gone into the NHS is phenomenal. The problem is, when you look at things like procurement, it's totally inadequate. There is billions basically being flushed down the drain every day.
Yes, but Jacqueline,
it's lost its focus on. There's no focus on customers.
Dodgy deals with,
well, we can talk about all sorts of dodgy, all sorts, you know. But the bottom line is, it wasn't just then. It's been going on a long time. And when you are running,
why didn't the Tories stop it then?
Well, I'm not suggesting that we did everything right by any stretch. You know my view. I think there were things that we should have actually grasped the nettle. The difficulty you've got with the NHS, it's emotive. And as soon as you start trying to discuss it, and as I've said for a long time, until people just start take this emotion out of all of it, and cross-party, people sit down and say, let's look and see what we can do with a health service for 67 million people or more in this country. It is not the same as 1947. It has changed considerably. The rise in population, a 10 million rise in the population over the last few years. You know, of course it's going to be very difficult for it to cope, but we also can't treat it like some sort of icon that you cannot touch and cannot criticise. I have friends that work in the NHS. They're actually up to here with their own bureaucracy that they're trying to deal with them when they're front line and trying to do a job. It drives them mad.
How do you think we could depoliticise it? Like, treat it like an Olympic bid, right? No one's fighting. We recognise it's a long-term change that's needed. And say, for the benefit of the country, this isn't going to be a
Well, we've tried it as the Conservatives, and as soon as the Conservatives get in, the biggest accusation we always have is, oh, they're going to privatise the NHS. The irony was that when the Blair government came in 97, I think parts of it, and I've no issue with that at all, was basically sent out, not necessarily even to tender, and then other companies came in. You know, it's like a monolithic, huge body that sort of sits there, and it's sort of from the top down. And it needs to be structurally, it's completely... I mean, I was in the airline industry. If the airline industry had tried to run the airline industry like the NHS has evolved over the last decades, there wouldn't be an aeroplane in the sky. I mean, it's open, it's transparent. If there's an issue, there's not an issue over whistleblowers because it's safety first. If you look at a comparison, it's a different industry altogether. But we know we have terrible outcomes. There's billions put aside for insurance claims for negligence, and it's not good enough. So I'm afraid we can't be too sensitive about this. It's not free. free. We pay for it for our entire lives, and we expect a damn good service.
I definitely think there are things to learn from the airline industry. As you say, when there's a disaster...
there is when it comes to whistleblowers and safety.
People are willing to look at the hard things and deconstruct and work out what went wrong. But the airline industry is a for-profit business. People aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're trying to make money. Surely the NHS has a different public purpose.
Well, the industry was nationalised when I started in it, because that's my background. But if you're looking at safety, which is one of the big arguments that the BMI put up very often, no, patient safety, you won't get patient safety while everything is closed down. It's like this, and then people try and raise issues, and there are massive issues, whether it's maternity units, whatever it may be.
You're in favour of Wes Streeting's managerial approach, then, to bring that change?
I think there's... Well, what you're going to have a target, or you're going to have a whatever. I mean, that's not a solution. This needs to be really grasped. I mean, I think Renée Hunderkamp, Dr. Renée, she comes on here sometimes, who we know, and she's a GP, and she said she spends most of her time up to here with administration. The computer systems don't talk to each other between one lot of doctors to another lot of doctors. You know, it's completely ludicrous when we're spending masses amount of money and public money on a service that you know, that should be far more efficient, but it won't be in its present form.
Well, don't forget there was the public consultation open, so everyone could have got their suggestions in as to how you at home would have fixed the NHS. Alison says what we need is a Trump-style overhaul of the NHS. Jeff says, Michelle, please, we can't keep using COVID as an excuse. This whole thing when it comes to the NHS has been a mess for decades. It needs huge, significant root and branch reform. Lots of people, Robert, he says, keep the NHS as it is, but leverage more private companies working alongside them to complement the suite of offerings. I would argue that what you need to do is take a step back and look at the scope of the NHS. Who should be getting what treatment on the NHS? Start right literally at that root question and work your way up from there. What do you think the answer to that is? And in fact, the broader NHS question, get in touch all the usual ways. Look, after the break, let's talk then. That viewer there saying, Alison, saying that we need Donald Trump to fix it. He has appointed Elon Musk to try and fix his government when it comes to efficiency. Is this the right move or not? Should we follow suit, get strong entrepreneurs looking at how we do things in this country? Tell me.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan, and they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, like, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Jacqueline Foster remains alongside me, as does our new face, Dr. Krish Kandaya. Welcome back, everybody. One of my viewers has just got in touch as well, saying, Michelle, we never really speak much anymore about the Nightingale hospitals that were built, that they were supposed to take a strain off a lot of the NHS hospitals. You raise a very good point indeed. Look, Donald Trump, he was suggested by Alison before the break, one of my viewers, to go in and fix the NHS. I've got to say, I do think Donald Trump's probably a little bit too busy to do that, Alison, but I appreciate your sentiment. But what he has done, Donald Trump, he's drafted in Elon Musk, or the great Elon Musk, as he calls him. He's essentially created this new, how do we word this, almost like a new function, if you like, so the Department of Government Efficiency. He's very keen. He thinks that Elon Musk, with another co as well, another good entrepreneur, can come into the government / bureaucracy. I think this is a fabulous idea. Other people think it's farcical.
Yes.
Where are you on this?
I'm conflicted, actually. Part of me is worried. If you remember, I'm a very old man, so I remember the 1990s when we had the Cash for Questions disaster, didn't we? That Mohammed Al-Fayed was paying various members of the then Conservative government to ask questions, and we recognised that something broke in our public trust. If you pay enough money, you get your agenda put through. Well, Elon Musk has paid millions, hasn't he, to get Donald Trump elected, including a lottery that he sponsored to try and encourage more people in swing states to vote. So I'm nervous that you can buy your way into power. That seems not very democratic. But on the other hand, I think there is something exciting about bringing fresh eyes in to look at very difficult subjects. I actually worked with Under Secretary Lynn Johnson, who was part of the Trump administration last time round, and she had 30 years in social work experience, and so she was brought in to reform America's foster care system. Brilliant idea. Often ministers don't have any personal experiences of the areas they're working in. They're just the last available friend that they can get into a particular position. So the idea that you could appoint people with actual expertise makes a lot of sense to me. And we have got one example of this right now in government. James Timpson from the fantastic Timpson shops. I'm a big fan of him personally, but also his whole family. They're a fostering family. They're a family that's very philanthropic and very entrepreneurial. There he is helping to reform prisons. So there is an example.
He's brilliant, and I speak highly about him often on this programme, because like you, I respect him, I respect his family and all the rest of it. But where was he then when we had all of this, so-called rioting, people going to prisons and so on? Where was the prison minister then? You barely even saw him. He should have been front and centre.
Well, the Prime Minister tried to take that one on board straight away. They've been in government for weeks, and this is his first time, so I want to cut him a bit of slack. But it's good to have him.
I like him, but I don't cut him slack for that, because I think that was a pivotal moment in your tenure. Yes, you're all new, but that's the nature of a new government. You're all new, and that was his moment to stand up and shine for me. And I feel a bit disappointed that he didn't do that. But anyway, Jacqueline, your thoughts?
Well, I'm delighted that Trump won. I didn't have a bet on him, by the way, but I think bringing in Elon Musk, and he's going to work alongside Vivek. It's Ramaswamy, who's another entrepreneur. I think they've got till July the 4th, 2026, apparently, to come up with their efficiency plan. They're looking at cutting about $2 trillion out of government departments. What he's also done, Donald Trump, which is quite interesting, is he's actually basically ended the Department for Education having any place at all in Washington. So he has sent back to the states the responsibility for education. He said, before that was set up years ago, we were in a very good position with public education, as they call it, in the world. And we're now, since that, because the amount of bureaucracy, again, and waste has actually had an adverse impact. I also like his appointments when we're looking at Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, Tom Homan for immigration, because these are massive, massive appointments. OK, some of them are Republican senators or they are politicians. You know, when you look at some of the people that he's brought in, as I said, Pete Hegseth, who's defence, he was ex-army, served in Iraq. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem to bring in people who are not elected at that time.
I agree with that, but what about buying a way into positions of power? Do you think that's appropriate?
Look,
are we on about things like the Cash for Honours scandal? Things like that?
Let's just... Can we just park that for a minute? Because we've done that to death over the years, and we don't agree with it. We don't agree with it. I come from a party which it's about merit. I want to see people in places because of merit or they're good at the job.
Sure.
But coming back to Trump, this is a very different type of election. They spend billions on these elections, and we have, you know, about 400 quid to be an MP in a whatever.
Sure.
I remember Margaret Thatcher bringing in David Young, Lord Young, and that was sort of at the time they went, oh, you know, he was this very successful businessman, and he came into the cabinet. And but generally, as a rule, there are very few people that we will tend to in our system, because our structure is different, from outside. They'll bring in somebody maybe to give advice or call them a czar, but generally they are not serving in a very prominent position in the department.
But these guys, I mean, these guys are not going to be part of the government.
No, that's my point.
They're outside of that. And don't forget as well, back in 2010, we had Philip Green, remember him?
Yeah.
He was brought in to do like an efficiency review. A lot of that was made at the time, and he said it was stuff like procurement, so much, you know, wastage, if you like, in terms of how we procure things, which to me is absolutely obvious. But anyway,
sure. That didn't help them because they wasted a lot of money on PPE that never got used, and there's still investigations going on about some of those inappropriate ways of
we know
things.
that, but we're moving on from that, because obviously we'd set up a fraud squad to do that. There were decisions that were made by the department doling out money, and they didn't do enough checks. Now, we know that they were under pressure, but that's not the point.
Sure.
And we've got to be able to claw a lot more of that money back. And I'm, absolutely fully supportive of that. But what we're trying to look at now is we've got our own problems. We are basically management and bureaucracy-led. And what we have lost in this country over the years is giving the entrepreneurs, is giving people who want to set up a business,
I think that's right.
this line, this message that Trump has. I mean, he's about... everything he does is about can-do. We sit here and it's as though everybody sits there and keeps telling you in politics what you can't do. And I find it very, very frustrating, and always have done as a politician.
See, when you look at the language, Krish, of this statement that Donald Trump released, about these appointments, I find it so energising and exciting. I mean, obviously, I'm not American, so it's not going to affect me in any way, but this is how I think politics should be done. They're talking about wanting to send shockwaves through the system of anyone that's involved in government waste. They're talking about very finite, timelined pieces of work, which, as you say, will conclude in 12 months' time. None of this, oh, yeah, we're going to have a decade of this and You're not even elected for a decade. I don't want to know what you're going to do when you're not even appointed. I want to know what you're going to do in the here and the now. Proper, shake it up, energised, optimistic change. That's what we lack, isn't it?
I think you have something important to say there. If we can get rid of the dodgy deals and genuinely find the best and most qualified people to do the roles, whether they've been elected or not, I'm up for it. I think that is something helpful. And it's my favourite thing about spending time with Americans, that can-do, optimistic attitude is fantastic.
But do we have that in this current government that we've got?
No, we don't.
I think you have examples. I think you do have some examples. For better and worse, I do think Wes Streeting does have a reform agenda, and I might disagree stylistically with how he's done that, but I think he has one. We've mentioned James Timpson. I'm hoping they'll bring someone called Paul Lindley. He's the guy that founded Ella's Kitchen, do you remember? He completely shook up the whole food industry for children. He's got a fantastic set of ideas he's trying to bring to government, bringing his entrepreneurial skills in. So I think there's hope, but we do need to sort out the whole ethics of it. It needs to be above board.
Can I just say, you know, if that was the case, this government have done nothing in the short time it's been here to actually support entrepreneurs and small businesses. They have clobbered them with national insurance. It's obviously very badly affected them, not even knowing that there was going to be an increase in the minimum wage. So that was piling on thousands to some of these small employers. You know, their mantra was supposed to be growth. You cannot tax people out of existence and then expect growth when it's the private sector that is generating the wealth to pay for the public sector that we want. So it's all very well. I mean, they totally misled everybody in any event. And then this argument now over national insurance, and of course it was only ever for, you know, the employee. It was absolute nonsense. We weren't that stupid that we didn't know what they were saying during the election campaign.
Yeah, no, but you weren't good enough to fight it off. That's the bottom line.
Well, we couldn't stop them. I mean, they won the election. We'd been in 14 years. I mean, I never thought that we were going to win the election, but...
I agree with you about the national insurance. That wasn't clear.
Yeah, look what they're doing to the farmers.
They did just have a multi-billion-dollar investments summit where lots of money has been pledged.
Where Elon Musk was not even invited. I thought that was embarrassing as a nation, not to invite the most dynamic entrepreneur that this world has currently probably got, is how I would describe it.
I am a fan of his products,
Jeff Bezos,
but not his
Amazon.
politics.
I mean, there are people around the world, these are the people that take the chances.
Well, there you go. What do you make to it all? Do you think we need people like Elon Musk helping out this government? If so, do we have those kind of people in this country? Do you think we've got enough optimism, enough energy, enough can-do? I don't.
No.
Anyway, tell me your thoughts. Look, this is suggestions now that we should have a Gaza family scheme when it comes to visas in this country to take people from Gaza and reunite them with their families here in the UK. Good idea or not? You tell me.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A lot of cloud around tomorrow. For many, it'll be a duller day compared to today. But again, for most places, not going to be much rain around. It has been a very dry start to November, thanks to high pressure by and large. Changes are on the way, particularly as we go towards the weekend. There is a weather front just slowly working south, but it's kind of fizzling out, bumping up against that high pressure. Will still bring some rain and drizzle, just trickling its way south across parts of central and eastern England through the night, eventually turning things a bit damp across the southeast. Ahead of it, temperatures could dip down to single figures, but behind it with a lot more cloud, generally a milder night than last night. Could again be some mist and fog patches forming through parts of southern Scotland where we do get the clearer spells, and it will be a damp and potentially drizzly start to the day across southernmost counties of England, so a very different feel here compared to today. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy, but there will be some holes in the cloud here and there. Thick cloud, though, for northern Scotland means a dull and damp and at times drizzly morning for the Highlands and the Western Isles. Let's go through the rest of the day. Not a great deal will change. I'm hopeful the rain and drizzle in the far south should scoot away, and also that skies will brighten over central and eastern England in particular. Decent chance of seeing some sunny spells coming through. Parts of southern and eastern Scotland may also brighten up, but for many it will just stay pretty drab. Where it does, 10 or 11 the top temperature, a bit of brightness, could see those temperatures getting up into the teens, and again the wind's fairly light for most places. Friday we'll start to see a change, but again for most it'll be dry. Some light rain and drizzle over northern England, North Wales, turning wetter in the far northwest and windier here as well. This is an active weather front that's going to bring a change, getting gusty and turning soggy. Further south, generally dry with some sunshine, 10 or 11 degrees Celsius, but it's going to turn colder for all of us through the weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Sean Moore. Starting off in South Yorkshire, the M18 northbound's got queues. It's blocked at junction 6 for Thorn following a multi-vehicle accident. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound is stationary. Traffic's being held because of an accident. That's before junction 24 for Nottingham South. Into Buckinghamshire, the M25 anti-clockwise has got long delays, so one lane closed because of an accident at junction 16. Queues are back to junction 18 for Chorleywood. Hertfordshire clockwise, the M25 has got long delays. It's after an earlier accident from junction 17 at Maple Cross to junction 18. Berkshire, the M25 clockwise, a broken down van's closed one lane after junction 15. Also in Berkshire, the M4 westbound slow. That's after an earlier accident between junctions 8 and junction 10 for Wokingham. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock tonight. If you're just joining us, my panel keeping us company, the Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Conservative peer and former member of the European Parliament, and Dr. Krish Kandai, the OBE and cultural commentator. Welcome back, everybody. I do want to say, if you were watching the show this time last night, you will remember that I had that chap on, Jim, fellow Hollensian, so he was, and he was telling us his ridiculous story of how he was fired from his job for having the audacity to state his pronouns as being a human adult male. Do you remember that? Anyway, he got fired and he got lumbered with a massive legal bill. And I just want to say thank you to all of you wonderful people out there, because he crowdfunded his legal fees, and you guys almost instantly during and post the show met that amount of money for him. So I know he's very grateful. So I said I would pass on his thanks to you all from last night. Look, let's come back then, because here in this country then again, we've had another suggestion that we should create a Gazan family visa scheme to allow people in Gaza to come to this country and be reunited with their family here temporarily whilst this conflict is going on. Similar, if you like, to the Ukrainian scheme. Jacqueline Foster, good idea or not?
No, absolutely not. You have the horrendous situation. Well, the entire situation could have been completely avoided if Hamas, or Iran, basically, had not entered Israel on the 7th of October, just over a year ago. Hamas and the Islamic Jihad Republic, the other groups, are fundamentally responsible for every death and every injury on both sides of this conflict. That includes all of the Palestinian civilians. They knew exactly what they were doing, and it was well planned. The difficulty that there is that nobody knows who exactly is a supporter of Hamas and who isn't. We have enough pressures for national security in this country with the amount of illegal immigration that's coming across the Channel and sometimes coming in other routes. We have a huge rise in Islamic extremism, which has really escalated over the last 20 years, slowly with the Muslim Brotherhood. It's now endemic across Europe. We saw what happened in Amsterdam very recently at a football match, and there have been other instances too. We've had our own 7-7 and Manchester Arena and all of these things. And I think we're being a little bit too lax of just really understanding and being aware of what the consequences are. So as much as I feel great sadness for the position that these people are in, these civilians are in, they have been used as human shields by these terrorists for years, and they shoot them in the back if they try and move out of an area where, for example, the IDF, the soldiers, have let them know where they're going to go. So unfortunately, the easy thing to do here to stop this war, Hamas has to turn around and say they will release the hostages. There are 101 of them, including babies, small children and women, and if they do that, then this will stop. And they've had an opportunity to do that now since a year last October, and they haven't done it.
So it's a no from you. Chris?
It's a no from me.
I've actually taken a petition to Downing Street with Ukrainian refugees who think there should be a family scheme. I was part of the design and delivery team working with the Home Office on the Homes for Ukraine scheme. It was one of the most proudest things that our nation has done in living memory. We've accepted nearly 200,000 Ukrainians.
Completely agree.
About 50,000 came in through the family scheme. That was people who had family here already, and they sponsored their family members to come. And all credit to the Conservative Party for thinking incredibly innovatively. They actually brought an entrepreneur in, Richard Harrington, to help lead that programme. So, you know, credit where credit's due. I agree with the Baroness that those hostages must be released by Hamas. But the people that we're talking about are civilians. We tried to get...
So are the hostages.
Sure. But we're not punishing civilians in Israel for what their government's doing.
No. Ukraine, if I may just say, Ukraine is a completely different situation.
People are people. People have dignity, value and
if I may
worth,
say,
wherever they're from.
I have a friend of mine who has a lovely mummy and her little boy, because their husband, and they've been with them for 2 years now.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I think the Ukraine system, it's very much straightforward as well. It's quite straightforward.
No, we're recognising there are civilians
the civilians coming out
war.
of the civilians coming out of Ukraine are not supporters of terrorist organisations.
Neither are the civilians.
Unfortunately, well, I'm afraid.
Gaza.
Unfortunately, they are. And if you sit there and you think naively that loads of... How many civilians do you think there were that went across the border and attacked the Israelis and murdered and slaughtered the kids?
Every civilian that went, every person that went was a terrorist.
There were more than 5,000 people, somewhere obviously established with Hamas, but there were many Palestinian men who were not necessarily part of that. They were civilians.
Law says that children are intrinsically civilian.
Well, therefore, Hamas need to get off the fence and understand what international law is, and they need to release the hostages, and then we can deal with the civilians. We can then deal... I mean, you know for a fact that Israel has often and always looked after civilians in terms of those from Gaza and other places when they needed operations. They use Israeli hospitals. Don't forget, there's 1.6 million Palestinians live in Israel. There's 2 million Arabs live in Israel. Israel is not a country where they don't want anybody who's an Arab or a Muslim to come and live there. They do. This is a completely separate issue, and this has evolved over the last 20 years, particularly with Hamas in Gaza, with self-rule.
I think we can distinguish
there is a solution.
Civilians in Palestine and Hamas, and I've got no truck with Hamas. They're completely wicked.
Well, there isn't a Palestine, there is Gaza.
So
this is where the civilians are.
For example, we tried to help 5 Gazan children. They were orphans. Their parents had been killed. Each of those children had a traumatic amputation. We were asking for the same offer that Britain made to Malala. Do you remember Malala was shot in the head? I remember
Malala. I've met Malala.
She's an incredible woman. She was shot in the head by the Taliban.
She was shot in the face by the Taliban.
That's right. And where was she put back together? In Birmingham.
Of course.
Our brilliant surgeons were able to help put her back together. Why couldn't we do the same for children in Gaza?
Because they're going to the UAE anyway. Because there's other Arab countries which are closer.
There were closer countries to Pakistan that could have helped Malala, but we recognise...
No.
We're not the closest
Malala is one
to
person
Malala.
as a separate issue.
No, she's not a separate issue. She's a model.
No, it was a one-off single issue.
Sure,
we're talking about a war zone where the children. Let's be clear, so the audience know, the children that are being injured and they're getting out of Gaza in this conflict are being sent to various hospitals, top-rate hospitals.
In UAE and Egypt, but they are overrun. We have the expertise to be able to help.
Right, but can I just...
Well, we've got 7 million people on a waiting list in this country trying to get operations.
And we had a lot of people on the waiting list when we helped Malala.
Of course we did.
It's a false argument.
No, it's not a false argument at all, because we're talking about very different situations.
We're talking about showing compassion to civilians.
We are compassionate. We are one of the most compassionate countries in the Western world. When we look,
on what basis?
We certainly are. When we look at taking in, we've had people from Hong Kong, we've had people from Ukraine.
Sure.
We took in 25,000. Hang on, we took in 25,000 Syrian families, women and children.
No, it wasn't Syrians,
this country,
it was Afghans.
No, we took in Syrians a few years ago. We did, and they were women and children. We stipulated that they be women and children, and I remember them arriving. I remember them arriving. They came from Syria. They did.
We have helped Syrians. We have, but we didn't just pick women and children.
Well, I know what the last government did with a lot of these conflicts.
I work very closely with that.
And we have, yes. Well,
we are generous for sure.
Of course, we are generous. The British public are some of the most generous people, in giving.
So we just need to show that same generosity to some limited number of people from Gaza.
I don't think there needs to,
Why not? Are Gazans somehow lesser than Syrians or Afghans or Ukrainians?
No.
You're making some kind of moral distinction between civilians in those countries.
No, I'm not making a moral distinction. I am talking about a real situation where there is a war going on and there is terrorism, which could have been avoided.
There's a war going on in Ukraine. There's terrorists in Afghanistan.
If Hamas stopped tomorrow, They can give up their weapons tomorrow.
We didn't say that in Afghanistan. We didn't say only when the Taliban stop their behaviour will we help Afghans.
You keep changing venue. Let's get back to Gaza, because this is what this is about. We can talk about Afghanistan. We can talk about all sorts of different countries. We are a generous nation. We have an issue here with the most horrendous form of terrorism we have seen, and terrorist attacks, the worst atrocities that took place since the Holocaust, took place on civilians on October the 7th last year.
It's terrible. Why punish Gaza children for that?
Nobody is overtly
atrocity?
Punishing Gaza children.
By refusing them visas.
We're not refusing anything. What we are doing, we are also involved in making arrangements for people. We got some British civilians out of Gaza
pretty
early on.
What about Gazan children?
Well, why Britain? There's a million countries in the West. Why would they have to come to the UK?
We're a generous country.
We played our part.
Not to Gaza,
we play our part on humanitarian aid.
Weapons to
on humanitarian aid. Don't talk to me about the money that this country's put in to places like Gaza and the UN and everywhere else.
No, but
people
I
are generous.
About a break. I need to go.
Anyway, sorry about that.
I shall give you that question. He says, "What about the Gazan children?" So I'll leave that to you to have in your mind, so you can think about it. You can tell me what you think the answer to that situation is. Then Alison Pearson, the journalist that's had a knock on the door, shall we say, and is now under police investigation. That is coming up.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie, really good to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour. So
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's salty.
Hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. It's onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are off.
Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, Michelle Dewberry back with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster alongside me, as is Dr. Krish Kandai. Good back. I was going to say good back, everybody. That's a combination of goodbye and good back. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Very spirited debate there about whether or not we should be accepting children from Gaza. I've got to say, you guys at home are as equally divided pretty much as these two on the panel tonight. I think that's a conversation that's not going to end anytime soon, unfortunately. That situation does continue in Gaza. But look, bringing it back to matters here in the UK, we've got a journalist, Telegraph journalist. You'll be familiar with her, actually, because she does pop up on GB News frequently, Alison Pearson. She is facing a police investigation, everybody, for apparently stirring up racial hatred in a social media post last year. She reckons that 2 police officers knocked on her door, Remembrance Sunday, telling her that she was being investigated. She's going to be on the Nigel Farage programme at 7 o'clock, so you won't want to miss that. But what do you think to this?
Well, I am worried about free speech. I think free speech is an essential virtue of a democracy, and so it is scary when people are chased down because of their social media posts. But I'm also recognising, I don't think anyone knows what specific post was.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think about, remember those tweets that happened after that awful attack in Southport where those 3 beautiful girls were killed?
Yeah.
There were tweets that stirred up racial hatred and it led to riots on the streets. And I know that some of the young people that got caught up in that, they're going to be punished. They might have just been out with some mates and they got kind of caught up with the kind of mob. I think the people that instigated that should face some kind of responsibility.
The people that instigated that was the person who took it upon himself to go around stabbing young children. That's what all that was about, I've got to say.
What he did was absolutely inexcusable. But we tweeted misinformation, or misinformation was tweeted about him.
Well, let's just get back to Alison. First of all, we don't know what Alison tweeted.
Sure.
I'm very active on Twitter. What people like me do know, and Alison, who's on the right, probably, if you look at journalism, she's quite outspoken, like me, on Israel.
You're not outspoken, are you?
Not me, no.
Goodness me.
I'm a very coy, quiet person sitting in the corner. And what I do know is that we are tracked. And anyone, and certainly the hard left, are very good at tracking us. They know exactly what we say, what we tweet. I've been on the wrong side of it on one occasion. And so I'm not remotely surprised, because what we have is we have professionals around who are tracking and looking at everything anybody says that doesn't fit in with their little narrative. And so, of course, Alison ends up in a situation where a tweet a year earlier, 2 police officers turn up on her doorstep, and on Armistice Day, to go and frog march her off somewhere. So she asked a perfectly reasonable question.
They didn't frog
what
march
was the tweet?
What they said to her, they wanted
yeah, but they were basically what she said was, what did I say? You know, which tweet was it?
Yeah.
Well, we can't tell you.
That's
Who
weird.
made the complaint?
Yeah.
Well, we can't tell you. You know, it was the complaint. They said they are now the victim. But this has happened in the universities. We've had this with academia. This is why the Free Speech Union was set up.
But
we've had it.
I'm with you, Baroness, but if someone were to tweet something anti-Semitic that stirred up hatred against Jewish people, do you think that should be caught?
Well, nobody's doing anything about that, because nobody's doing anything.
Is that something important?
Well, nobody's doing anything on the streets of London every week when we have these marches.
But would you agree
with the anti-Semitism, which is
free speech
right?
has its limits, and therefore, if someone was stirring up,
it's a balance to be struck. I'm called a Zionist, and many other things. I have to tell you on my Twitter feed. Now, I could complain every 5 seconds if I wanted, but at the end of the day, you know, as you said, we agree to disagree. If you're on Twitter and you're a bit sensitive, I'd suggest that you actually go off Twitter, because actually it can be very.
I'll tell you someone who has gone off Twitter. You teed that up nicely. The Guardian.
The Guardian.
They've decided that they are going to leave that platform now. What do you think to that?
I think that's a big deal. Twitter is my safe space. I love being on Twitter, but I'm noticing my feed is changing. I'm being sent stuff that I didn't ask for. I'm being advertised stuff I'm not really interested in. It doesn't seem to be necessarily a free speech space anymore. I'm being marketed to, I think, some of my tweets that would normally have got a bigger view aren't working on the algorithm anymore. So I can understand why they would leave it. But look, it's one of the reasons I like coming here. I believe in free speech. I believe in dialogue and discussion. I respect the Baroness. She just told me some really interesting, important work she's been doing for many years for civil rights in Zimbabwe. We don't agree on everything, but we can have a civilised conversation. And I'd love it if Twitter could be that we could have differing
well, I
opinions.
have to disagree with you, because Twitter, actually, since Elon Musk took over, I have no idea who was doing the editing or who was doing the whatever on Twitter. I mean, I remember you've had a complaint, because I'd mentioned something about British farmers, or I'd had a complaint fairly recently. I got an email and they said, and here was this tweet. And I went back and I said, my tweet is accurate. And they went, oh, OK, so we'll put it back on then.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, a link into Islamic extremism. It was one of those things, and I had tweeted about it.
Do you think it's got better under Musk?
And I absolutely do. Of course, there's advertising. They're running a business, so you can actually block those if you want to be I don't know, a supersonic member or a whatever of Twitter if you want to do that. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is a great platform, but we cannot have, going back to what's happened to Alison Pearce and many others in academia, which was why Toby Young set up the Free Speech Union, and they are representing people at workplaces, people being sacked over a pronoun. I mean, what in the name of God is that?
Glynis has got in touch and said, Michelle, you're asking what is the country coming to? You're asking the wrong question. She said, because unfortunately we're already there. You see, one of the things that I find fascinating about Twitter, all these people, I mean, I don't know why everyone feels they need to announce their departure. It's not an airport lounge, but that aside, no one seems to have a problem when the so-called Twitter files, all of the stuff that was unearthed in there. So there was essentially shadow banning of what many would describe conservative viewpoints. You had people like Donald Trump blocked off it. You had allegations about stuff like the Hunter Biden laptop stuff. All of that stuff was suppressed. Nobody, as I recall, on the left of politics seemed to have a problem with suppression of information then. But now that that suppression has been lifted, and therefore you do now see the other side of the argument, because I would say that Twitter is now a free speech digital town square, then all of a sudden people are now upset because now they see content that they feel that they shouldn't, but they weren't concerned about all of this when it was happening on the other side.
You've got the Ayatollah Khamenei you've got the Ayatollah Khamenei as a Twitter account.
And
I mean, you have got terrorists all over Twitter, and this is true, and they haven't blocked them actually.
The Director General of the BBC came out and said that he was backing the Labour government 100%, that he's going to pay for the Labour Party to have a greater vote share in the next election, we'd be worried about the partiality of the BBC.
But then why
they're not impartial.
So you're suggesting that now it's impartial because Elon supports Donald Trump, but then why wasn't everyone complaining when the Hunter Biden stuff was alleged to be suppressed by Twitter? Many would say that had an indirect effect on the previous.
And Elon hasn't blocked the left. He hasn't blocked the left because, obviously, there's loads of people on the left that are on Twitter.
Well, look, this conversation could definitely continue, but for now, that's all we've got time for. Thank you, panel. Thank you to each and every single one of you at home. Are you worried anymore about what you tweet or not? Up next, Alison Pearson will join Nigel Farage. That's all from me. Night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A lot of cloud around tomorrow. For many, it'll be a duller day compared to today. But again, for most places, not going to be much rain around. It has been a very dry start to November, thanks to high pressure by and large. Changes are on the way, particularly as we go towards the weekend. There is a weather front just slowly working south.